Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the D and WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the fourth part of WhatIf Chaos. Deku brought everyone together to watch different versions of Izuku Midoriya. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The 22nd universe. Okay, let's begin the questions about this universe. Discord said before pausing momentarily. Well, it's more along the lines of explaining this universe even furthermore, so yeah. I have a bunch of questions, Melissa exclaimed, raising her hand. First question, that version of myself said she knew Izuku for a very long time, so how did that happen? Also, what did my dad do with his plan to steal that device to give it to Uncle Might so he can keep going on as a hero? The blonde girl tapped her chin a little before her fist into her hand. Also, how did I manage to convince me to allow me to graduate early from high school to become Izuku's support designer? And what was Uncle Might's reaction when he knew that Izuku and I were skipping dating and going straight to marriage? The girl giggled a little with her hand on her mouth. I bet Uncle Might chased him around the island telling Izuku that he betrayed his trust and backstabbed him. And finally, Izuku was supposed to be trained by pro heroes, right? So why did he come to Island to begin with? The girl hummed for a couple of seconds to see if she had any other questions, but she didn't say anything. Discord blinked. Wow, that's a lot of questions. I barely kept up with you, Mel. He ducked to avoid a horn aimed at his head. But let's start from the last question. Izuku went to Island because All Might wanted David to make Izuku's suit and introduce David to the newest OFA user, especially after something went wrong with one of Izuku's internship days, with All Might making the boy a bit depressed. Discord looked at Purgatory, who shrugged. Anyways, as for your first question, you both used to talk together on a forum for quirkless people where they exchanged their stories and struggles. It was funny seeing you both walking around Island to go and see your online friend till you saw each other and understood that you were online friends. Kaminari asked. Hold your horses. Everyone looked at the boy. Are you saying those two used to talk to each other online in that world? But when they met in real person, they began to text each other and went on a wild goose chase to find each other. Discord nodded as Kaminari laughed with a sweat drop. That's kinda sad if you ask me. Discord carried on with his explanation regarding All Might's reaction. The man was devastated when he found his successor was getting to know his best friend's daughter too much for any man's liking, so when Izuku proposed All Might, well, I have to give it for that Izuku's reflexes, because All Might's punch parted the sea into two pieces for 3 full minutes. Izuku looked at All Might, who blushed. What can I say? She's like my daughter. Izuku replied with a betrayed tone. And I'm like your son. Doesn't that count for anything? Shoto then yelled from the side. I knew it. Dad Might is real after all. You just said it. Izuku merely facepalmed because he accidentally Shoto's delusions that he's All Might's secret love child. Discord coughed into his fist. Well, let's move on because we're going to see plenty of worlds where Dad Might is real. Izuku sighed as Shoto took out his conspiracy notebook. Regarding your other questions, when your dad knew that All Might had a successor who was going to carry on his torch, he cancelled his plans with his assistant to steal the device. It put a wrench in Sam's plans. But the man didn't stop and still carried on with his plans. Izuku was lucky when the plan happened that he was still with his students down at the plaza. He made quick work of Wolfram and kicked his ass with the usage of Fajin. Before Bruce asks, you gave it to him after he kicked Stain's butt across Japan. The third yelled, don't give the boy my name yet. I want to have some anonymity. This made Yoichi, Shinomori, Nana, and Diaga shake their heads as they looked at the man. Purgatory then said, don't feel bad. The third looked at him. At least, you have this goody two-shoes as the one who knows your names. Do you have the slightest idea how many villainous Izuku tore it from you after they stole OFA from All Might's successor in their worlds? All the users' eyes widened. Yes, in some worlds, AFO's plans work slightly in defeating OFA. And when I say slightly, I mean that Izuku destroys AFO before he can take over his body. AFO snapped his fingers at a very close victory, but he was content that AFO and OFA were finally untied. Izuku gulped. Are you saying there are worlds where Tamura and I switched places? Discord waved his hand. Sometimes, but there are worlds where you fight for the title. Others where you overthrow Tamura and take his place. In those worlds, it is usually poor Mirio who gets his heart ripped out after you rip OFA out of him. But there is that one world where Kendo was dancing on many tones at the same time that pushed you to become AFO's successor. Mirio was thanking the gods that he didn't get OFA, but Kendo was intrigued by the wording Discord used. What did he mean that she was dancing on too many tones? Discord then clapped his hands. All right, for your final questions. You asked how did you manage to convince your dad to allow you to graduate early? Well, you told your dad how you wanted to replicate his experience with All Might. Plus, you told him that you were the only person who understood Izuku well enough to stop him from going too far, so David accepted her logic. Add to that, the marriage thing was kind of a deal breaker, so he was forced to allow his daughter to graduate early. Discord smiled. I have to give it to Melissa. Not many people can pull 5 days in a row to study for their exams. Izuku looked at Melissa and poked her cheek. You can't do this for yourself. It's not healthy. Izuku then felt 5 unimpressed stares looking at him. He then saw Itsuka, Ibara, Toru, Tsuyu, and Melissa deadpanning at him, making him ask, what did I do to look at me like that? Melissa answered him, well, because you're the pot calling the kettle that she's black. Tsuyu added, plus, need I remind you that you pull all-nighters every day? We're trained till you fall exhausted. I lost count of how many times the girl and I dragged you to your room to cuddle with you a little bit before we headed back to our rooms. Izuku was alarmed at the last part. Toru then asked, also, do we need to remind you of how overzealous you are in your work? Kendo poked his cheek. Izuku, there were many times when I found you passed out in the gym. Ibara nodded. Yeah, we had to meticulously lift you from under the weights such that they don't crush you. Although hugging in your sleep was a plus, it won't change the fact that you always... Izuku lifted his hand. I get it. I promise to be more careful with my training, but I don't know why you are angry with me. It seems that me overdoing is some kind of a boon for you girls. The girls laughed. Discord laughed. All right, now that was funny. But do any of you people have any questions regarding this world or more questions about it since you already saw it? Spinner raised his hand. Well, I need to ask you something. Discord nodded. What is Stain's position of All Might's successor? He must have put him through some kind of test to see if he was worthy of carrying All Might's torch. Discord shuddered. Yeah, Stain considered Izuku in that world for some reason to be a fake. He attacked him multiple times trying to kill him since he tricked All Might into taking a fan-craving child to be his successor. Discord gave them a serious look. It was not very pretty the first time he attacked Izuku, nor the second was, nor the third, nor the fourth. Or finally when he was brought down at the 5th attempt when Ida dumped his internship with Gran Torino to go and search for Stain. Ida heard a low growl coming from a small man with a yellow cape. He then saw All Might inching away from the man. Ida gulped. And may I know who is Gran Torino? At that, Ida saw All Might and Purgatory both shivering in fear as the latter said, no one scares me except that man. He pointed at the small man, making Gaia laugh. Oh, don't tell me you're afraid of that small old man. Gran Torino hummed. I guess you went under my hands and trained with me for a bit. Shoto raised his hand. What happened to me? And how did my absence affect the class? I played a huge role in the USJ. He hummed a little bit, but then again, Midoriya was the one to fight the Namo and was able to defeat it, so he didn't need my interference. Discord nodded. Well, you were royally angry that you were demoted to general studies and swore to Izuku that you'd force him to accept you back into the hero course with your mother's eyes. Discord chuckled a little. Regarding the USJ, Itsuka and Manga helped Toru defeat all the clowns that were at the mountain zone where you originally fell, so it didn't cause much of a difference. Shoto felt down that his presence wasn't noticed in this world, but his dad asked, how did Shoto get back in the hero course? I don't see him attending therapy and working over his issues. The man looked at his wife and ushered Discord to come closer. It sure didn't work with his mom at first. Discord whispered back, it's because you were an ass, and she was batshit afraid of you. Discord then said, as for the way he came back to the hero course, Izuku had different plans for the 2 finalists in the fighting tournament. Instead of fighting each other, they were going to fight him. The finalists were Bakugo and Shoto. Izuku hoped this fight would help both overcome their shortcomings. Izuku took out Bakugo in the blink of an eye just to bruise his ego. He wanted to show Bakugo that this was not Aldera anymore, and he wasn't top dog any longer. Shoto was a different case. Izuku toyed with him and everything went like it went here. Purgatory looked at Endeavor. I think he didn't hear your explanation. He's kinda iced right now. Discord looked and saw Enji frozen inside a huge block of ice courtesy of a smiling ray. AFO asked, I must ask something. Does Stain team up with Tamura to kill the Midoriya kid, given that in this reality Stain seems to see the kid as a fake hero? This would be an interesting development. Discord answered him. Yeah, Stain agreed to a temporary alliance with Tamura to end Izuku's life, so you armed him with 12 Nomus and 1 experimental high-end Namo, who thankfully died in the middle of the fight. Ida coming into the picture changed everything, though Ida did receive the lecture of a lifetime from Izuku. Izuku sighed in relief, but he felt a chill travel through the room. He looked and saw Aizawa glaring at Ada. Even though you were in another city, you still sought him out. Ada merely shrugged in defeat since he didn't have anything to defend himself with, making both Izuku and Aizawa sigh. Problem children come in all sizes and shapes today. It becoming so frustrating. Aizawa complained. Discord asked, all right, does anyone have any more questions that need to be asked? When he heard no reply, all right, Minimi, tell me what you think about the latest info you received from this world. Discord smiled. And don't leave anything out. Izuku replied, well, for starters, I think if I were to be a hero this early, I wouldn't want anyone to be at my side except Melissa or May, because they know what they're doing. So it was a nice development that she was my finance, and before anyone asks why, It's because they will both be a huge boost in my activities and it's not illegal to date. As for what happened in the lab, May is a slippery one, but that's what I like about her. She never gives up. I hope my future wife will be like that. Everyone heard a thud and saw a passed out May with a steaming face. Discord smiled and began to rotate the wheel till it finally landed on a world, AFO Deku. Izuku's and every OFA user's eyes widened seeing such a world. But what shocked everyone was a sudden wave of pressure that made several students pass out. Izuku looked at Purgatory, who had a wave of bloodlust coming off of him. The boy went and shook him, making the man stop. Izuku asked, "What the hell was that about?" "You knocked everyone out." Izuku looked around him, wondering how he knocked everyone out. With just your stare. Purgatory shook his head. "Sorry, but let's just say I have a lot of bad blood with a certain version." Izuku nodded. "I know what you're going at, but I thought you were invincible. No one can harm you." The green-haired man flicked him. "While I am strong, I'm not invincible. I only stand at low multiversal when it comes to strength. I fought Goku 50 years back and our fight ended in a stalemate. It was only due to the many skills that I collected, adding to that my healing factor, that I survived. Back then, I felt entire timelines erased by our punches meeting each other." Everyone looked at him with awe. "Yeah, that Goku. If screaming was a contest, he would win it. I still don't know how he does it." Nezu asked, "That wave of pressure you just emitted." Purgatory looked at him. "Was it something you learned throughout the multiverse, or was it something in our world?" The green-haired man smiled. "Now, that would be spoiling fun further down the line." Discord then said, "Well, whatever it was, you need to control yourself." The Chaos user was struck by lightning, making him puff out smoke. "Hitting me with lightning won't make you feel any better." Discord then added, "But make something to cover Eri's eyes, if this is who you think it is." Purgatory looked and saw Eri fast asleep in Ibarra's vines, making him sigh in relief. "All right, you can begin with this trashy world. Hope I don't get an aneurysm while I'm watching." Discord nodded. "Let the world begin and hopefully, no one dies." The scene opens with a gate to a cemetery. The gate's door was cackling until a hand was put on them. The owner of the man looked, or rather sensed, someone inside the cemetery and smiled. "He's here. Everything is going so well so far. Soon enough, I will have my perfect successor." All Might's face went pale white. "No, no, no," the man shouted. He looked at FO, who held a huge smirk engraved on his face. "How dare you corrupt young Midori? I will kill you." All Might threw himself at FO, but Discord snapped his fingers, forcing All Might to be sent to the timeout corner, causing AFO to laugh in amusement. AFO looked at All Might and replied, "Don't blame me if that version of you lost a diamond in the mud." AFO smirked. "I have a rare talent for discovering such cases, while you can't." Inside the cemetery, Izuku could be seen putting his head against a gravestone. The boy's eyes seemed close to being dry from how much he cried. It wasn't supposed to be this. Why, he was the one who was always suffering. Wasn't 10 years of his life being absolute hell bad enough? Wasn't the number one hero callously stumping on his dreams and burning them just to make sure that they're destroyed for good, only to leave him on the roof of a building after he was suicide baited bad enough? This wasn't fair. He looked at the tombstone that said Izuku Midoriya. Loving mother. Izuku cried a little more. The boy clenched his fist in frustration. "If I was only born with a strong quirk, none of this would have happened. This wouldn't have been put under the rug to protect him." Izuku looked to the sky and yelled, "Why is it that the strong always walk on the weak? Why is it I'm the one who suffers and grieves while trash gets to be happy and never face the consequences of their actions? Why is it that I'm treated like this? What horrible crime did I do in my previous life to deserve this? Why does he get everything while I get nothing?" The boy then looked at a visible billboard from the cemetery. The veins on the boy's forehead bulged when he saw the face on it. It was a billboard of All Might with his famous catchphrase, "Have no fear." Why? Because I am here. "Man, it's odd to see Deku-kun angry at seeing All Might," Archako said with a small sweat drop. She felt a shiver run down her spine and saw Purgatory deadpanning at her like he was saying, "Do I look like a joke to you?" The girl looked away. "Even his deadpan makes me feel like death is waiting for me." Momo bit her lip. Did All Might leave Zuzu on the roof after he crushed his dreams? He wouldn't do that. She looked at the former number one hero. "Would you?" All Might stayed silent before sighing. "Yeah, I did that." He ran a hand through his hair. "Back then, I was in a hurry. I thought that if I let him down gently, he would just stop running after a dream that is impossible. It truly wasn't my finest moment." Purgatory seemed that he was about to say something, but Gaia punched him in the gut, making him wince in pain. The man glared at her, but she simply pointed her sword at his face, daring him to say anything. He simply rolled his eyes and looked away, making the girl sigh and pinch his cheeks. Gaia said, "You're much cuter when you're silent like this." She leaned toward him. "I know what you were going to say, but there's no need to make the picture much darker than it already is." Izuku yelled at the billboard, "Tell me, great symbol of peace and justice, why did you do it?" "Ha!" The boy screamed higher. "Why did you cover for him? Why did you save his ass when he killed my mother? Why did you do it? You were supposed to be on my side." The side of the victim, but you took the side of the murderer. Why? He opened his arms and pointed at himself. Is it because I'm quirkless and he has a strong quirk? The boy took a stone and threw it uselessly against the faraway billboard. I hate you. I will do everything in my power to take you down and destroy everything you built like you destroyed my life. The boy looked at his mother's grave and began to hit his head against the stone. You and that bastard will never be able to sleep after I'm through with you. Izuku then slid against the gravestone. He chuckled to himself. He began to wonder how he could do this when he had no power. Who will believe a quirkless kid and be willing to stand against All Might? No lawyer, police officer, or hero with a shred of sanity will listen to him. Inko had tears in her eyes. I died. How did they happen? She looked at her son and then the version on the screen. She felt a pit form in her stomach. This is about to get deadly. As much as I hate to admit it, I'm Izuku's last pillar of hope. I don't want to see what he does if she dies. Izuku looked at his mom with a betrayed look. Man, I thought my mom would be on my side. Inko walked to her son and hugged him. Sweetie, we both know that I'm right, so don't try to pretend that I'm lying. She looked at the 5 girls. But I'm quite happy that my baby boy now has 5 wonderful girlfriends to keep him happy. She then looked at Eri. And a wonderful grandbaby to coddle. Izuku's sweat dropped, but Tanjiro poked him. I think it's nice that you have such a strong relationship with your mom. It's very nice. I wish my mom was still around. He then looked at the screen, and I hope that version of you doesn't fall into the dark side. But from how things are going. Izuku nodded. I agree with you, Tanjiro. The scene doesn't paint a positive picture for the future. Until just a couple of days ago, heroes were everything Izuku ever wanted, but now he hated them from the bottom of his heart. All they do is stand around waiting for a camera to come and take pictures of him when they do something they are supposed to do without the cameras. Izuku looked at the sky. Why does trash get to have everything while the innocent get stomped all the time? The boy began to laugh quietly. Heroes truly only exist in comic books. All Might cringed. This is bad. I don't want to see young Midoriya influenced or working for FO. Izuku sighed. Neither do I, but given how things are heading, I suppose that this is going to happen. It is truly frustrating how heroes can get away with anything these days. A voice said, startling Izuku and making the boy back away. Izuku looked up and saw a man wearing a suit with a black mask over his face. Izuku didn't why, but the guy felt like he was pure evil. But Izuku couldn't care less at this moment. If he wanted to kill him, he could do it. Don't fret, my child. I do not wish to hurt you. The man crouched down, getting closer to Izuku's face. I am not of one those attention seekers who left you to die and suffer alone. Izuku remembered the pain he felt from the heroes always ignoring his pain in favor of his tormentors, and anger began to flood him. If you know, leave me be. What are you going to say to me next? That you saw my potential to become a great hero. You'll take me under your wing to train me. Go away. This isn't a manga where shit like this happens. AFO chuckled, someone with an attitude. I like that. Our partnership is going to be interesting. Kokoshibo hummed, interesting. So, he does the same thing as Muzan used to do. He must have been watching over the boy for quite some time to approach him and take him under his wing. Ibara frowned, attacking someone at their lowest point. So villainous. She looked at FO, who smirked at her, making her shiver in fear. But there is some merit to it. Izuku nodded. Yeah, this is quite smart. I wonder what happened to my mom though. It seems that she died unnaturally. He then looked at Purgatory. You know something, don't you? The man stayed silent, not bothering to answer Izuku. The man patted the boy on the head. Of course not. I would never stoop to such delusions. I would never ask someone to do something so irresponsible and delusional, but I do have an offer. Izuku looked at the man. An offer. The man smiled under his mask. Of course, I want to help create a better future where everyone is treated equally, where you wouldn't see people posing in front of cameras. Izuku remained silent while listening to the man. A world where another woman like your mother won't be put under the rug because her killer had a strong quirk that could make him a hero. Izuku looked at him with a sad look. Does this world exist? Can you make it happen? A small voice in the back of Izuku's head made the boy ask. Can you help me take my revenge against those who had harmed me and killed my mom? The man nodded and put his hand in front of Izuku. The boy quickly took it as the man said, from now on, I'm going to be your teacher. I will help you shape this world to your vision. Izuku nodded but asked the man what to call him. The man simply replied, call me Sensei. All Might's heart dropped. No, young Midoriya. He's going to be on AFO's and Tamura's side now. Purgatory interjected. Not exactly, All Might. He cut off All Might before the man could ask anything. And no, I won't spoil the surprise that is waiting for you, but believe me, OFA never helped anyone in this world. Ninth put on an honorable fight, but he lost in the end. The third user yelled, we lost in this world. How the hell did we lose? With the boss's quirk and mine. It should have been an easy win for us. This is just all this effort, just gone. Purgatory replied cryptically. He ripped you guys apart one by one instead of trying to rip it whole. Only Izuku and the users understood the message Purgatory sent their way. The helicopters were swarming around the now destroyed area in Camino Ward. Cameras were pointing at the new figure who entered the arena. No one fully understood what happened. First, some kind of monster appears and destroys the heroes who came to rescue Ragdoll. Second, said monster proclaims that tonight his successor will take over his throne and how proud he was for all the progress he made in such little time under his tutelage. Third, the monster ripped his face apart and died as All Might arrived. And finally, a massive wind blast threw everyone away, making a huge dust cloud. When the dust settled, all the heroes were shocked to see a boy about 15 years old standing there calmly. All Might looked at the new arrival and his eyes widened. No, it's that boy. He joined AFO. That's impossible. How did that happen? Young Midoriya was a beacon of heroism. Izuku looked at everyone and smiled menacingly. What's with the long faces? It's like you've seen a ghost. The boy then heard a voice whisper, Deku. Izuku looked behind him only to see Bakugo. Izuku kept smiling. Kaken, I didn't see you there. You must be wondering where your friends are. Don't worry, that should be functional by now. After all, a demon king needs his bodyguards. Bakugo was enraged and attacked Izuku. What the hell do you think you're doing, Deku? I'll kill. Bakugo didn't get to finish his statement as he felt an unspeakable pain shot through his body. The boy began to cough blood. Bakugo looked down to see a fist going through his stomach. He looked up and saw Kirishima's face looking at him with a stony expression. Izuku popped from behind him and asked, Do you like him? I call him the Stone Golem. He has multiple earth, hardening, diamond, and stone quirks. This is just his base form. He looked at Kirishima. Let him go, Golem. He needs to see the rest. Kirishima then pulled his fist from Bakugo's gut, who looked over Kirishima's shoulder and saw the people who used to hang around him back at school. Mina, Gyro, Ochako, Kaminari, and Siro. The boy spat out blood. What fuck did you do to them, Deku? How can you do this? I thought. He was cut off as Gyro opened her mouth and let out a sonic scream that made him fall flat on his ass, increasing his injury. Izuku looked at him with pity, and to think, I used to see something in you. The boy shook his head. But what I see now is a pathetic loser who can't fight his friends. Endeavor then yelled. Fire Flash Fist. He launched a fire attack toward the boy. Mina moved to protect him, but he put his hand on her shoulder and said, I'll take this. Mina stood down. Oh my god, Izuku said with dread over his face. What in the world did I do to my friends? I turned them into gnomes, but why do they look like their regular selves? This doesn't seem right. I can't look. Mina replied, You're telling me. It's freaky seeing myself as a monster while maintaining my beauty. This takes everything to a whole new level of weird and unsettling. I just can't look anymore. Siro gulped. Did he turn just into his bodyguards? But why? He has AFO's quirk. It just seems unreal. Discord answered. Well, he saw you guys as Bakugo's first true friends, so that's why he kidnapped you. He wanted to let you loose on Bakugo to kill him or force him to kill you guys. AFO smiled. Now, this is a successor to the legacy of a FO. Even though I don't approve of giving him all the power that I have, I somehow made it work just right. He rubbed his head, though. I wonder where young Tamura is. Probably got killed in the fight for my throne. Izuku opened his palm and absorbed the fire attack. He then redirected the attack 10 folds toward Kamui Woods, burning the hero before Izuku dashed toward him and stole his quirk. Mount Lady then came to attack the boy, but Izuku disappeared from her sight. Moments later, she felt a pain in her chest. The woman began to cough blood as Izuku tore his way out of her chest. Permeation. Mirio Tagata wasn't an easy opponent, but electromagnetic fields quickly destroyed him. All Might's eyes widened at the mention of the hero student who went missing before the new year began at UA. He killed young Tagata. No, this is all my fault. I made him go down this path. I must bring him back from the darkness I forced upon him. All Might in this brief moment of distraction missed a lot. The veteran pro looked and saw all of his allies dead on the ground, with the last being Tiger, held by Izuku as he stole the man's quirk before ripping his head off his body. Endeavor, Izuku said to the man who was barely clinging to consciousness. As much as I like to kill you and steal your quirk, but someone else called dibs on your life. He kicked the man in the head, making him pass out. Bakugo meanwhile was barely managing to cling to life. He was bleeding quickly, but he screamed as he felt Izuku heal him. You can't die, Bakugo. Not until I kill the symbol of peace. Izuku looked at All Might and ushered his bodyguards to go away. The 6 bodyguards then disappeared in Kurogiri's shadowy mist as Izuku faced All Might. Are you ready, All Might? Izuku's smile grew larger. I took out all the distractions that might keep us away from our fight. All Might walked forward. Young Midoriya, please stop this. It isn't too late to stop this. Whatever AFO told you, it was a bunch of lies. He was using your pain for his goals. Izuku frowned. I can't believe I hurt my friends. I killed heroes who I loved and respected. Izuku clenched his fist. Is this how some versions of myself act? Like true villains. The girls around him hugged the boy as Discord sighed. This isn't who you are. Every version of yourself determined their own path. You aren't responsible for their actions. All Might sat beside Izuku. Yes, young Midoriya. That version isn't you. Although I feel bad for him, he still needs to be taken down. I feel horrible for the role that I played in bringing him into this world. But no matter what, you should never blame yourself for something out of your control. Izuku nodded. But I can't help but feel bad for the things or rather he did. Ibara smiled and replied, "It's because you have a noble heart, Izuku." She then kissed him on the lip, followed by the other girls, making Izuku blush. Izuku cut him off. Yes, of course, he did that. And I know what you're going to see next. Izuku then made his All Might face. Stop this, young Midoriya. I can still see the good in you. Be a hero and turn over yourself quietly. Izuku then busted laughing before recomposing himself. All Might, do you think this is a fairy tale where everyone lives there happily ever after? Because it isn't. Izuku added, prepare to die, All Might. Izuku then launched himself at the hero. Izuku looked at Discord. Please tell me, All Might won and he took me to Tartarus where I was locked away to rethink my life choices. All Might, I didn't kill him, did I? Discord looked away. I'm sorry, Izuku, but you did kill him. All Might fought till the very end, but Izuku used the same trick AFO used. He mentioned Nana and All Might lost his cool. The second user crossed the distance and smacked All Might over the head. You buffoon. 3 months later, Tenko Shimura was not having a good day. He was running from one place to another. He bit his lip. After All Might's defeat, he went solo. He already lost too many of his students to Deku, and he wasn't planning on losing any more. He knew this was a temporary solution, but AFO Deku was focusing on his efforts to end his life. So, in this world, I was a hero, Tamura said, rubbing his chin. Let me guess. Some hero found when I was roaming around made me his apprentice. Discord nodded. All Might was in the area when your quirk activated, so he managed to save your family when your quirk activated by swooping your family to safety after he chopped off Hana's hand to stop Decay from killing her. It was a messy affair, but it was done skillfully. After that, your mother divorced your father, taking you with her, and you can already know who Izuku is hunting you. Tamura rubbed his head. Yeah, no shit, I got OFA. My death isn't going to be an easy one, is it? A loud explosion was heard beside him, making the young hero look and see AFO Deku floating in front of him. The boy smiled. Give up, Shimura. We both know that you won't survive to see the next day. Tenko then activated Gear Shift and Fajin combined with Smokescreen to escape from the monster that stood in front of him. But he was met with a fist to the face. AFO Deku yawned. I'm bored of this cat and mouse game. He then floated in the area, so I'll simply kill you and take the quirks from your dead body. The boy then made a huge beam of light come down from the sky to hit the downed hero. But when the smoke cleared, AFO Deku saw that Shimura was still alive with some kind of shield around him. Izuku blinked. Someone was brave enough to intervene in this fight between monsters. Discord replied, not just anyone. You need to be immortal or suicidal to intervene. The Chaos user hummed a bit, or a little bit of two to do such a thing. Let's watch. AFO Deku yelled. Who dares to interfere with my fight? He then heard crawling noises coming from behind him. When he turned, he saw a huge orange crab with a big head looking at him. The crab then answered him. This isn't how you tell a joke, ruffian. First, I say knock knock, and then you reply by saying who dares. AFO Deku's veins throbbed on his head. AFO Deku yelled, you dare mock me, the killer of All Might. AFO Deku, what kind of death wish do you have to do such a crazy thing? AFO Deku wanted the new arrival to tremble in fear, but he didn't. He simply stared before replying. I would most certainly mock you, Izuku Midoriya. I'm doing so now, albeit subtly. AFO Deku screamed angrily. Who are you to be making fun of me? The crab then jumped and grabbed AFO Deku while Shimura watched in awe. Although I'm generally much too modest to boast, on rare occasions, I do come out of my shell. The head of the crab opened, revealing his mind. The mind began to spark with electricity, shocking AFO Deku. The crab then let go and fell to the ground as it began to shapeshift until he landed in front of Shimura. The hero was shocked when he saw a flaming skeleton in front of him. The skeleton then summoned a motorcycle, hopped on it, and ushered for the hero to get on it. Get on, we don't have much time before he regains his composure. Izuku rubbed his chin, wondering who was this. He then remembered something about purgatory. He looked at his counterpart. This is you, isn't it? You said it yourself. You can mimic the powers of other versions of myself. Discord nodded. Yeah, but this is a sore subject to him, so let's look away and leave it for later. Purgatory's only reply was, I did tell you I traveled the multiverse, didn't I? Don't be shocked if you see me in a world here and there. The two drove away from AFO Deku, who gave chase. The flaming skeleton said, Shimura, drive this thing away from here. I'll handle the flying Deku once and for all. The Decay hero didn't have time to say anything as the flaming skeleton jumped from the motorcycle. The man shifted once more in front of both the villains and hero's eyes into someone with armor and kicked Deku in the face, sending him to the ground. Shimura drove away. Whoever you are, I'm sorry I had to leave you to fight him. AFO Deku got up from the ground and growled, "Who do you think you are? Do you even understand who I am? I am death itself. I will kill you." I find that hard to believe given that I heard those threats many times before. AFO Deku heard. But then again, the only person who can kill an Izuku Midoriya is another Izuku Midoriya. AFO Deku's eyes widened as he finally saw the face of his opponent. It was like looking in a mirror. "This can't be. You can't be real. Is this some kind of joke?" AFO Deku yelled. His opponent was another version of himself with a sword on his hip and a cowboy hat on his head. He also had an eagle sitting on his shoulder. What's so hard to believe? The multiverse is wide. I've seen stranger things, but don't feel bad. You'll be my fifth AFO Deku who I killed. AFO Deku replied, "Only the battlefield will decide who kills whom." The man then sent out a flame attack against his opponent, who summoned a large circle with symbols that spewed flames. The two attacks met and a huge clash emerged from it. Izuku looked at Purgatory. "Okay, I have to ask, was that magic?" Purgatory sighed before nodding. Izuku then asked, "Is there something wrong?" The green-haired male replied, "Nothing. It's just that it would have been better. You know what, forget it. There is no use in looking back right now." Izuku wanted to press for further answers, but Discord said, "Who has questions?" The 23rd universe. Discord looked at the people as Aizawa asked him, "First off, I need to ask what exactly happened to Midoriya's mother that pushed him to be tricked easily by AFO's false promises. Second, what was All Might doing near Shigaraki's old house? And what do you mean that he chopped off Shigaraki's sister's hand to save her?" The man rubbed his chin. "And how did he manage to kidnap at least 6 of my students from under our noses? I get the camp attack, but surely he couldn't pull off such a great attack. And what happened during the USJ? Did someone die there or did we all escape?" The man's eyes widened. "And what happened to Ada during his attempt on Stain? Tell me, my student didn't die. Another thing, it was mentioned that Shigaraki was my student's teacher, so where was I? The nomes that AFO Deku made from my students, why do they look so lifelike? They don't even resemble the nomes. And finally, does Purgatory manage to win the fight against AFO Deku?" The man clenched his fists in despair. "Please, tell me that my kids were saved and returned to normal." Izuku from the side smiled. "Aizawa-sensei, even though they don't see the goodness in you, I can." Purgatory eyed Aizawa. "He's so much better than my version of Aizawa. I wish you were my teacher." The man looked down at a pendant he was wearing. "Perhaps my life would have been better." Discord thought to himself, "Aizawa-sensei, even though I have seen many versions of you who are complete scumbags, you'll always be my mentor, and that's why I care about you." Regarding the last question, you have to ask that question to the man himself. As for how the nomes of your students looked perfect, Izuku spent much time working with Dr. Garaki to perfect the Namu formula, but he did it after he used Garaki as a lab rat. Ouch, AFO was pissed, but the Namu Garaki was just as useful as the human one, so he didn't care much. As for your role in this world, you were the self-defense instructor. You used to mop the floor with them so they could know how to throw a punch. As for Ada, AFO Deku stopped Stain from him after he stole a sample of his DNA to give it to a Namu. Ada never understood why he didn't kill him, but it didn't matter later on. Ada was the last of the resistance movement against him to fall. As for the USJ, a more advanced Namu was sent, but it didn't kill All Might, it just beat him and AFO Deku broadcasted it. The students were left bruised and battered because AFO Deku wanted to send a message that he could kill the students anytime he wanted. In other words, it was a complete shitshow. Izuku rubbed his head. "How come there's so much difference between my leadership and Shigaraki's?" The difference was astronomical. Discord rubbed his head and put his hands on Purgatory. "Well, this one is on him. He will have to explain some other things along the line because things are about to get complicated." Discord then coughed. "All right, as for the rest of the questions, regarding the 6 kidnapped students, well, they weren't kidnapped from the camp, but rather their homes. But they were declared that they were kidnapped after the camp attack where Bakugo was kidnapped along with Pixabob and Ragdoll. Pixabob was to make the perfect Kirishima Namu or stone golem as AFO Deku called him." Discord looked at Nana and Tamura. As for why All Might was near Tamura's old family house, he was there because he got a tip that AFO was there. He miraculously arrived when Tamura was about to kill his sister. He quickly chopped off her arm and took a young Tenko to somewhere safe so he could let out the destructive nature of his quirk after his breakdown. Tamura's quirk didn't come in peacefully, but it was rather a very rude awakening. As for the first question, Bakugo tried to stop a bunch of thieves from stealing from a shop he was in, but Mom was walking nearby. Bakugo wasn't careful. He let out his strongest attack against the thieves, but the thieves had durability quirks, so he let his quirk loose. He wasn't doing it for justice, but he wanted to be the headline after his capture by the sludge villain. He wanted to show everyone that he was still top dog. Yeah, it didn't work. The first attack caused the windows of the shop to explode, and well, I guess you get the idea. All Might put his hands on his mouth and gasped, "Don't tell me that I saved him from being." Purgatory replied, "You did just that." It was what caused Izuku to hate all heroes after All Might vouched for Bakugo. It was one of the most depressing things he learned about that world. A frown made his way to his mouth when he felt Gaia nudging him. She then grabbed his cheeks and forced him to smile. Enko cooed at the scene, but the green-haired man quickly stopped her line of thought. Don't get any funny ideas. We're just co-workers. He still had a small blush on his cheeks. AFO coughed. As amusing as it is seeing a person so strong that he can vaporize me with a look acting like a blushing teen. Purgatory had his hair turn into snakes and hissed at him. I am intrigued why I killed myself and allowed AFO Deku to take my place. It doesn't seem like me. Discord answered him. Well, that version of you saw that it would be much funnier if Izuku destroyed everything by himself away from his influence just to make All Might suffer. He wanted All Might to see the once heroic boy turn into a complete monster who wanted to destroy everything with his own free will away from AFO's machinations. It was also why he let the Garaki thing slide. AFO nodded. I admit I find it much amusing in case I just let him reign free away from my influence. The man laughed. Just seeing All Might's face and reaction was priceless. Not being the Demon King is a small price to pay to see that face of despair on the symbol of peace. Izuku looked at Purgatory. You promised that you were going to explain what happened with you and that version of me. From the way you spoke, you make it seem that he survived your encounter with him. Izuku looked intensely at his counterpart who remained silent. The green-haired male sighed. I got caught up in the fight. It was the first one that I had after 10 years of grueling training. I let my guard down. He managed to steal a very special pendant that contained a picture of my late wife to be Inari. At that moment, he knew the key to defeat me. Aizawa sighed. Let me guess, AFO Deku bolted to grab them both and use them against you. Yeah, it wasn't a pretty affair. Purgatory replied, but it didn't work the way he wanted. I managed to save them and punched a nuclear-infused punch that sent him out of the atmosphere and embedded in the moon. The man sighed, but at that same moment, my time in that universe is up. That version of my lover, Eri, and I were teleported into a demon slayer world. And given that Eri had a horn, he face-bombed in annoyance. Yeah, it took some explaining. At the time, I thought I killed the AFO Deku, but I was proven wrong when he was making a plan to shape the Dekuverse in his image. His reaction was priceless when he attacked me only to have a hole punched through him. Nezu then asked, the Dekuverse. I suppose it means the multiverse that contains all versions of Midoriya-kun. The rat bear thing sipped his tea. It's interesting. What did he do? Did he try to make himself the version where all Izuku Midoriyas originate from? Discord and Purgatory laughed, as if that scrub can find the original Izuku Midoriya. He needs to assemble the 10 pillars of the Dekuverse to make them agree to open a portal for him to enter the universe of the first Izuku. Discord crossed his arms, and believe me, that's easier said than done. Izuku asked, and how do you know that the pillars won't agree to his plans? Discord replied, because they're the strongest versions of you out there. Discord hugged Purgatory and was about to add something. But Purgatory punched him in the face. Purgatory replied, you talk a lot, don't you think? And before you say they were going to find out eventually, don't you remember what happened to the last version of Izuku who learned this information? The green-haired man's hair was snakes hissing at Discord. We had to scope him up with a shovel because the Dekuverse sent a villain so strong, he eviscerated him into nothing. Izuku gasped. The last Izuku who learned this info died. The boy looked at Discord. Why the hell did that happen? Discord replied, the less people learn about this info, the better. The Dekuverse is a living being that wants to protect itself. The original Izuku, his pillars, and their identities are hidden to keep. It's safe from people like AFO Deku. But why didn't it destroy him once he became a problem? Momo asked, a question running through everyone's mind. Oh, it's kinda my fault. Purgatory admitted. From what I know, I was supposed to die in my home universe, but my survival wasn't what the universe wanted. My survival made a cosmic imbalance in the Dekuverse. When I gained my quantum abilities, I further increased this imbalance. My deeds of the destruction of anything that threatened the lives of Izuku's versions of my wife-to-be, or Eri didn't help either. This ass, he pointed at Discord. Turning me into an assassin for him made the universe exceptionally angry with me, so they decided to make someone to challenge me, and voila. We had AFO Deku of Earth 56,879,993,004 divided by beta 9905 VM1. Gaia deadpanned at him. So, he might one day come to our world and increase our trouble. Purgatory smiled. Oh no, I had him all covered. He won't bother anyone anymore. Where I go, he follows. He took out a pendant with a black gem in it and looked at it. He's all safe here. Ochako then asked, do we also have our main version and pillars? Purgatory looked at Ochako, astronaut in 23, and then at Momo, scientist in 30, and then at Bakugo, villain in 18, and finally at Shoto, got himself locked up at the insane asylum with his mother in 19. Each and every one of you clowns a multiverse to himself. The less the pillars are, the stronger the verse is. No more questions. Discord coughed. Alright, we had a huge number of universal secrets revealed which I will pay the price for later. He gulped and tugged at his shirt, heavily. Izuku, what do you have to say about this world? Izuku in Purgatory gave the Chaos user an unimpressed look because he was the one revealing the secrets in the first place. This world is very dark. It shows something that I tend to avoid. It shows how easy it was for me the day All Might stomped on my dreams to turn to the dark side. Even though I won't admit it in normal circumstances, I was very angry at All Might when he crushed my dreams. It seems in this world my anger was over the top and made me become a villain. My ruthlessness frightens me in that world. Even Purgatory showed signs of ruthlessness, but it was righteous. I hope that he won't cause any problems. Discord in a hesitant Purgatory patted him on the back and tried to comfort him. Discord then said, now, let's roll the wheel of eternal embarrassment to see what world we have in store for us. We need to embarrass Minimi even further than this. Izuku flipped him only to get whacked by Ibara for enforcing bad habits in Eri. The wheel began to roll until it finally landed on something. The raging storm, the past Discord smiled and Purgatory sighed. Are you planning to drag another version of ourselves here? Discord gave him a thumbs up. Yeah, you know this is going to be the greatest team-up of Izuku's ever. He then hugged both Izukus, making Izuku groan in annoyance and Purgatory to growl like an animal ready to rip him apart. I want to see the dream team form. Purgatory kicked him in the face, making Discord's face flip upside down. Last, I remember the dream team told you never to bring them within 5 meters of you, so you are the reason we almost died. Izuku was now interested in the conservation since it sheds light on the two versions of himself. Discord then snapped his fingers and a figure landed in front of them. He was wearing a standard Demon Slayer uniform with lighting theme. His sword was tied to his hip. On his back, everyone was a huge box which they heard shuffling coming from inside, making Tanjiro feel excited. This version of Izuku smiled and bowed. Hello, everyone. My name is Izuku Midoriya of Earth 1 divided by A. He was elbowed by Purgatory, making him rub his side and send an apology to the green-haired man. Apologies 957,632,111,284 divided by Omicron Alpha 282374637 I'm a hero in training for Class 1A. I'm also a demon slayer who's hunting down one asshole who just can't die. My hero name is Reiju, so you can address me by that to avoid any confusion. Tanjiro hugged him and tried to reach for the box. Is there a demon in there? The boy was happy that someone else went through what he went through. Who is inside the box? He then looked at Eri. Is it Eri-chan inside the box? Did Muzan turn her into a demon? Reiju raised an eyebrow. I don't know anyone by that name. I was brought here before the training camp. He then looked at the box and smiled nervously. As for the contents of the box, they should stay inside because it might cause many broken hearts if I let her out right now. He then put his ear on the box and heard soft snoring coming from the inside. Plus, I think she's asleep. Izuku asked, are you like the ice and snow Hashira version of myself? Reiju looked at him and looked like he was thinking about something before snapping his fingers. You mean the ice boy? No, I'm a little more special than him. He was a combination of two worlds. He rubbed his hair a little. I'm more of continuation. Izuku hummed as he tried to understand what this version of himself meant. Discord hugged Reiju. Man, the storm boy. It's been a while since I saw you. I bet you missed me. Reiju headbutted him. Yeah, didn't I warn you to never come near me after your first disaster? Discord pouted. Hey, how was I supposed to know this was going to happen? He rubbed his forehead. I didn't mean for it to happen. He went to carry on, but a blast from Purgatory shut him up. Discord looked at his warlord counterpart and frowned. No need to be so mean. Just the main idea that you're annoying us is enough for us to be mean, Purgatory remarked. Reiju snorted. Plus, it's not like you're some kind of saint. He patted the Chaos Lord on the head. You're more like a pain in the ass that I have to deal with from time to time. Momo then asked, so there are 4 demon slayers here, but this Izuku here is a demon slayer and a hero student. Momo tapped her chin. Is he a spy from the demon slayer corps inside the hero society body? Reiju chuckled, making her pout. Discord then snapped his fingers and Kyukashibu disappeared. I think that's enough for him. He looked at Tanjiro and Kanao. But I'm keeping you both here. You're fun to have around. Tanjiro smiled. Thank you for such a wonderful experience. Kanao nodded her head. Purgatory then sent him a cautious look and asked, where did you send old Six Eyes to be exact? Discord smiled. I gave him another chance in life. I sent him back to where he was. Purgatory's eyebrows twitched in annoyance. Still, how did Izuku of Earth 2223839263644 divided by Omega Omicron 2235056037225 VGDHF BDHN 12-344 know of me? He must be a version of Six Eyes who I killed. Izuku then asked, are we going to be starting this world or is there any explaining going to happen? Reiju laughed as he patted Izuku's head. Calm down, kid. patience comes with great things. He then sat down and set the box beside him, making everyone wonder what was inside it. The scene began to change, meaning that the world was about to appear, which excited Izuku since he considered the Demon Slayer world the closest thing to being a quirkless hero. The scene began with a mountain. It zoomed in on a path at the bottom of the mountain. The scene began to ascend the mountain until it reached an area filled with trees. Tanjiro then said, "Oh, this must be the final selection." His face paled and he said, "To those who don't have a strong stomach, I recommend looking away because this isn't going to be pretty in any manner." Reiju nodded. "Yeah, this is going to get messy quickly." His face became slightly red, but before my final selection began, he scratched his chin. Something a little embarrassing happened. Izuku chuckled a little. "What, did you trip over a loose brick and had a girl catch you like me?" Reiju laughed. "No, but this did happen in the entrance exam." Izuku was now confused. Wasn't this version of himself in the past? But it is about a girl. Reiju was now sporting a huge blush. The scene then zoomed in on Izuku, who was wearing a kimono with a storm pattern. Izuku was taking deep breaths as he was talking to himself rapidly. "You can do this. Jiji told you that you can do this. You don't have to be worried about this. You trained 3 full years for this." The boy was so tranced in his pep talk to himself that he didn't notice someone coming up to him and whispering into his ear, "Hello, you seem really nervous. Do you want to talk?" Izuku, like the cat caught off guard, jumped back as he screamed like a little girl. The boy fell back and hit his head against a tree, making a small lump appear on him. Everyone was laughing at Reiju, who was groaning in embarrassment. The green-haired boy looked away and mumbled a little. "Everyone has an embarrassing moment. There's no need for this." Izuku patted his back. "Now, I know what you meant, that something embarrassing happened." Tanjiro added, "I bet everyone wrote you off from this moment forward, right?" Reiju laughed. "Haha, they learned to regret this going on forward." He pointed a thumb to himself. "I walked like over this test." He hummed for a moment before purgatory flicked him. ... Fine. At first, I was scared witless since killing another human being was still hard, but I managed to dominate the rest of the exam going on further. Izuku's sweat dropped. "I see that you're a little prideful." Izuku saw his counterpart simply give him a thumbs up and asked, "By the way, who was the person who scared you?" Reiju smiled. "She is someone amazing. She has a unique vision that I, myself, can't fathom, but it's nice to see hopeful people like her still exist." He looked at the box and smiled a little. "I'm so sorry," a female voice said. "I saw that you were very nervous and I wanted to help you calm down. I didn't mean to scare you like this or get you hurt." Izuku groaned as he rubbed his head and said, "Don't worry about it. I suppose something like this was going to happen sooner or later." The boy tried to lighten the mood. "Still, it's nice to be scared witless by another demon slayer rather than a demon who wants to have me for his dinner." The female laughed a bit. "I suppose so, but here." She extended her hand. "Let me help you up." Izuku took her hand and she helped him stand. The girl then teased Izuku, "Don't you suppose it's about time to introduce yourself?" The boy fumbled a bit and looked at the girl. His face then erupted into a bright blush for her beauty. She had midnight black hair that reached her face. She had a small smile on her face as she tried to calm him down. Her eyes were a lovely pair of pale violet. In her hair, she had 2 butterfly clips. The boy began to stutter as his brain finally processed that a girl was talking to him. Ever since he woke up here, he never really interacted with girls his age. The only girls he interacted with were the women of Oyakata-sama, whether be it his wife or daughters. But all these interactions were limited to greetings while Izuku recovered from the demon attack that he woke up to. Tanjiro then asked the million-dollar question. "What do you mean that you woke up to a demon attack?" The boy tapped his chin. "Were you asleep when it happened and you woke up to find your family dead?" Reiju shook his head and put his finger to his mouth, telling him to be quiet. Kanao looked at Kani and rubbed tears from her eyes, remembering her sisters before something dinged in her mind. She grabbed Reiju and shook him. "Does this mean my older sister is your girlfriend in this world? Did she survive her interaction with Dama?" Reiju has swirls in his eyes, but he grabbed Kanao's hands, moving them away. "Damn, you grow up to have one hell of a grip." He took a moment to adjust and said, "But regarding your question, you'll find out in this world later on, but she's good as a nickel." Discord said, "Well, look at that mini-me. First Demon Slayer world, it's Shinobu. This one is Kenny." He smirked at Izuku, who flipped him off. "What are you planning next, to harem from the Butterfly Sisters?" Tanjiro laughed till his brain processed the statement and he stopped dead. Izuku flipped Discord off. "Fuck you." Bakugo felt extremely proud of Izuku at this moment. The boy tried to adjust himself to the fact that a girl, a very beautiful one at that, was talking to him. Izuku looked at Reiju. "Wow, you're just as bad as me when it comes to talking to girls." Reiju rubbed his cheek. "Well, what can I say? I had a harsh time, but everything will be explained in due time." Reiju said as he sweat dropped, seeing Tanjiro hug Kanao tightly like she was about to get taken from him. "That's kinda sweet. A little clingy, but sweet." Kanao tried to get out of the boy's grip. "Sweetie, I'm still here. No need to be this clingy." The girl laughed at Izuku's attitude and began talking. It seems that you aren't used to girls talking to you, are you? Izuku sadly nodded his head. Well, no matter, here you get to have new experiences, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Kanikacho. Izuku laughed himself a little. Well, I suppose so, though. The boy stopped for a bit. I hope new experiences aren't going to be trapped inside a forest of trees while fighting flesh-eating monsters. Izuku then remembered to introduce himself. My name is Izuku Midoriya. It's a pleasure to meet you. Inside Izuku's head, I did it. I talked to a beautiful girl. See, you're already making new experiences, Kanny said with a small blush herself. You talked a bit loud, but you look nice yourself. She pinched his cheeks and teased him. They're so pinchable. Izuku meanwhile was doing his best strawberry impression. Kanao laughed at Reiju, who was blushing at the scene, while Izuku's sweat dropped. This reminded him of the entrance exam, but Reiju spoke to the girl. He looked at him. Why are we so awkward? Momo said from the side. I think it's cute that you get flustered around girls, Zuzu. Her face soured. At least, you're better than some perverts who don't take a hint, she said, looking at Minta, who was making an altar to Izuku because the green-haired boy in his eyes was making a huge harem. Discord looked at her and was confused. What's wrong with her? I saw at least 200,000 versions of her where she entered a harem with Minta willingly. I still have nightmares. Purgatory was less discreet than Discord. Need I remind you that some worlds you enter into harems with him? Momo shivered. She wished she could forget this. Izuku stirred the conversation. Okay, Kanao. It seems that your sister is really… Kanao answered him, straightforward and happy. A very bubbly person and a social butterfly. She smiled, looking at her. That she was. She was sadly killed in her encounter with Dama. I hope she doesn't die in this world. She truly deserves the best. Reiju smiled and patted the girl on the head. Don't worry. Everything will be all right. Izuku sputtered. Well, it's just… I don't know. He calmed himself down. It's just… He sighed a little. I never really had any positive interactions with girls or people at that. He can occasionally still hear the sounds of explosions hitting him and feel them burning his skin. Kanny frowned a little before grabbing his hands. Well, I hope you begin to have more positive experiences going forward. She smiled. If we both survive, I hope we can be friends. Izuku's face was burning brightly as he nodded dumbly. Yeah, okay. That's cool. Kanny then went away, telling him to make sure to come out of this alive. Izuku just nodded, unable to speak. Izuku's face didn't cool down as he tried to make sense of what happened. I made a friend. Take that, Kaken. The boy was knocked out of his state when he saw people going to the entrance. Izuku headed to the entrance as the two children stood in front of all the Demon Slayer hopefuls with their eyes drilling holes into his soul. Even though I lived with them for a while, it's still creepy. He looked around and saw no one looking at him inside, which meant he didn't speak out loud. Not that he didn't tell them this to their faces, the drilling into his soul part, not the creepy part. He didn't need Jayamai to intensify his training when he was under his care before being sent to train under Jiji to learn thunder breathing. Izuku looked at Reiju. Wait, I thought you lived during the demon slaying era. Reiju shrugged. How come you know about Kaken and quirks? Come on, tell me. He then pointed at Purgatory. Don't be like him. He never gives me anything. Ibara then pulled Izuku back and patted his head. Melissa smiled. Izuku, I'm sure he's going to tell us what he knows about everything when this world is finished. So, don't you fret. She pinched his cheeks and giggled. Tanjiro asked Reiju, so you must have gone to Jigoro. He was the one who's Zenitsu thunder breathing. Reiju nodded. But did the same thing happen in your world? Reiju sighed. Sadly, yes. I was supposed to do it too because I took him as my Tsugoku, but Oyakata-sama managed to find a way for me out of it. Tanjiro sighed sadly, since Zenitsu's mentor's fate didn't change even when he was in a different world. Reiju rubbed Tanjiro's head. Kid, don't think about it too much. Sometimes, fate is set in stone. Izuku then asked, so do you use thunder breathing? Reiju shook his head and smirked. It's been 3 days since Izuku entered the Wisteria Forest. To be honest, he thinks that the demons there are much nicer than his previous classmates in junior high. He was sure that his classmates, when they die, they'll be dancing limbo in hell for being so low. Izuku jumped back before decapitating a demon that was in front of him. The demon began to curse him, but Izuku looked at him indifferently. Kaken used more colorful words, so he wasn't bothered much. He still found it hard to kill a human being, but he got over it after the first kill. He was thankful for being pragmatic. That is what Jiji told him. He always told him that Izuku's ability to be realistic when needed was his greatest strength. Izuku wiped the blood from his sword and continued to walk. He hadn't got a good day's sleep. There are so little places to sleep. It was dangerous to sleep during the day, and less so during the night when demons were crawling around like ants on a piece of sugar. It was currently daytime, so he hoped to find some place where sunlight was present so he could sit and relax. He has found some bushes and picked some berries to eat. His stomach was grumbling. Izuku looked at Reiju. How come you don't find it hard to kill them? Reiju raised an eyebrow. I mean, I know myself, so I know I must have found it hard to kill a living, breathing person, even if it's a demon who wants to kill me. I understand your reasoning though. Reiju nodded. I have to admit that the first demon I killed there was the hardest. He rubbed his shoulders. I mean, you're talking about killing a breathing creature no matter how evil it is. But I knew I needed to do this to survive, so I fought with it. It wasn't easy, so to speak, but I did it. Izuku frowned. It must have hurt to kill it. From going to save everyone to killing demons. Reiju nodded. Yeah, it wasn't the best feeling. But when I continued, I saw how demons acted. I saw many sights that numbed me to those feelings. Demons are nothing but evil monsters that should be killed. During my second day, I saw 2 demons fighting over the corpse of another contender. It was hard, but I killed them before burying the corpse in a shallow grave. I wish I could have buried him better. Tanjiro nodded his head in an understanding manner. Purgatory patted his back. You did the right thing back then. Don't trouble yourself with it. Reiju gave him a sad smile. I can say the same thing for you, but you still hold a sword over your head. Purgatory's face darkened for a moment before returning to normal and looking away. Tsuyu looked at both of them and wondered, what are they talking about? Come to think of it, they seem to know each other. The girl then looked at Izuku, who was wondering the same thing. Izuku was walking when he felt someone behind him. From the way he was approaching Izuku, the boy knew it was not to talk to him, so he pretended not to sense it to lure it in. The next moment, the person following him pounced at him, which Izuku dodged quickly and drew out his sword. Izuku said, can we make this quick? He looked at the small pack of berries he had. I need to find some place to eat in peace. It had been 3 days since I had a decent peaceful meal. The boy looked at his opponent. He reminded him too much of Kaken. He had short black spiky hair. His eyes were a piercing red and he had sharp claws. The demon had a deranged look on his face and was somewhat delusional just from looking at him, like he was the greatest thing to come to this world since Toasted Beard. I'm also hungry, so why don't you let me kill you? No, thanks, Izuku replied as the demon growled and launched himself at the green-haired boy. The boy blocked before going for a vertical strike against the demon, who dodged him and tried to use his claws to slice Izuku's chest. But Izuku blocked him and kicked him in the chest. Izuku took a step back to readjust himself. This one is much stronger than the ones I faced. He looked at the demon, who was circling him slowly like a predator observing its prey. He seems much wiser than the other demons here. Mostly, they attack recklessly, but this one took his time to sneak up on me. Better be ready for anything. Reiju smirked. I had to admit this was the only time I came close to death other than that hand demon who I saw from a distance. But I calculated my losses and made sure to avoid him like the plague. He can still remember how he saw some demon slayer hopefuls being ripped apart by him. Izuku asked him with his eyes narrowed, did you leave someone there to die? Reiju nodded. But Aizawa grabbed Izuku. Problem child. He told you he calculated his losses. Let's say he went there and fought only to get outmatched and killed along with the ones he was trying to save. What good would have that done anyone? Izuku sighed and nodded. The boy retorted, I wasn't about to shame him. I know he wasn't in a favorable situation, and it was survival of the fittest, but still, it hurts to know I abandoned someone to die without trying. Purgatory replied. Not just you. All of us feel the same way except deranged villainous versions of ourselves, but sometimes you can do nothing about it. Reiju nodded in agreement. Reiju added, just to make it clear, I did save other people, but this one just gave me a bad vibe. Tanjiro gave his 2 cents. Yeah, the hand demon almost killed me. If Reiju-sen saw it was best to not fight it, he probably did the right thing. Izuku nodded his head. The demon launched himself at Izuku and the two began to trade blows, until Izuku swept under his arm and sent a diagonal slash that was aimed toward the demon's neck. But the monster dodged it and only got his arm cut off, making him growl in anger. The demon then yelled, regenerating its arm. That's it, brat. No more Mr. Nice Guy. The demon launched himself at the boy and yelled, Demon Blood Art, Explosive Speed. Reiju smirked. I took pleasure killing this demon. I only needed to replace its face with someone. Bakugo meanwhile shivered and gulped. He's talking about me, isn't he? Izuku's sweat dropped as Purgatory fell over and laughed with Gaia poking and telling him to be nice. Izuku's girlfriends on the other hand gave Reiju full scores, making the green-haired male ask, Isn't that a little bit over the top? The girls looked at each other before shaking their heads, making Izuku sweat even harder. This fight is going to be intense, but even I can't admit this is going to be a little satisfying. Izuku's entire body froze as he remembered those words. Those words. It's like the boy was knocked out of his thoughts when he felt a sharp pain in his side. His body instinctively dodged the attack, but he was still scratched by the demon passing him. This is going to hurt like a bitch. The boy looked at the demon, who said, When I'm done here, I'm going to find a way out to become the next Upper Moon. He then looked at Izuku. Get ready to die. Demon Blood Art. Izuku readied his sword to block his attack. But something else happened, shifting earth. The demon touched the ground and spikes erupted under Izuku, but the boy dodged with luck. He used the spikes as a jumping platform to reach up into a tree. The boy sat down and looked at the demon. So, he has a demon blood art. Gigi told me about them, but I didn't think I met one here. The boy jumped off the tree and looked behind him to see vines almost caught him. Or at least, not someone with blood art this strong, so it's some kind of nature control. The boy thought as dodged under a torrent of fire while jumping over some vines. I guess it's time to use my breathing style. The boy took a stance and bent his knees a little. Storm breathing. First form. Build scale. The boy blasted forward with blinding speeds that the demon barely managed to dodge, resulting in his legs getting cut off. I still need to work on my speed for this one, but it was better than nothing. Izuku looked at the demon. It seems you got slow. Did you get slower when you used your demon blood art? The boy dodged the demon who attacked using intense speeds. No, but when you use multiple abilities at once, you need to coordinate so you get slower. Must be why you are here. The demon jumped at Izuku spewing fire, but the boy dodged him and turned toward the demon, storm breathing, third form. Izuku then swung his sword hard and hit the demon, sending him into the air momentarily before Izuku used the sword to swing it down at the demon's neck, cutting it off and slamming the demon's body into the ground. Howling wind. This is over. Reiju smiled. Well, to be honest, this was a small version of what really happened, but still. Tanjiro asked him, so, you use storm breathing? It's derived from thunder breathing, right? Awase then asked, how did you manage to find out his weakness? The boy had stars in his eyes. And the final attack was awesome. I can't believe how you lifted him in the air from a sword strike. Reiju blushed a little, rubbing the back of his head. Stop, I wasn't that cool, but to be honest, during our fight, I noticed that every time he used multiple abilities, he seemed to slow down, so that's why I deduced that combining aspects of his demon blood art makes him slower. Izuku clapped his hands. You're so cool. He looked at his other counterpart and earned a jerk. Purgatory flipped him off while Discord pretended to be wounded in his heart. Toru decided at that moment to pull a Gaia move and slapped Izuku upside the head. Stop being so mean to your counterparts. The boy rubbed the assaulted spot and pouted, making Toru giggle. Right now, Izuku is sitting with two children. Both of them were 11 years old and were twins. They both had long black hair that faded to teal at the end of its tips. One of them looked at Izuku with admiration while the other looked like he wanted to use the axe he had to chop the green-haired boy up and make him into meat pies. Izuku coughed into his fist while trying to think about something to say, but the one who was admiring Izuku spoke first. Thank you for the meal, Midoriya-san. It's been a while since me and Yukairo had a full meal. The angry boy known as Yukairo began to chastise his brother for saying this while Izuku laughed at their antics. He can tell the older brother wanted to protect his brother, but was going the wrong way about it, since putting your younger brother in bubble warp and hoping for the world not to harm him is much more dangerous. Izuku should know. He lived with his mother after all. Turns out trying him like fragile glass didn't do wonders to his self-esteem like his mother hoped, or that's what Oyakata-sama told him one day. Izuku looked at his mom, who sighed. He's right. I was so confused about what to do when you were declared quirkless that I began to flounder on the smallest thing. I should have given you some space. Izuku replied, It's my pleasure, Yukairo. Lady Amain told me to take care of you kids. Yukairo interjected, Forget it then. If you think this might make us join you people, you can get. Izuku carried on. And no, I'm planning to force you into the core. But I do want you to come and live with me, or at least in the near vicinity of the core, because I can't positively leave two defenseless children to their devices inside a demon-infested forest. Aizawa nodded. This is a very logical course of action. And given they sought those boys out of all people, it must mean they have the potential to become strong demon slayers. Reiju nodded. Yeah, and Mukairo turned out to be a strong demon slayer. He was a second Tsugoku after a black-haired bitch. He rubbed the back of his head. Who knew the little string bean had it in him to cut demons down cruelly while smiling? Tanjiro nodded. Yeah, but he was completely emotionless and cold toward others when I first met him. Reiju tilted his head in confusion and asked, What are you talking about? Yukairo is a ray of sunshine, but Yukairo is a little bit sour. He can't be a demon slayer, but he is a good medic. Yukairo glared at him. Don't bother then. We'll be just fine. We'll avoid the demons. Izuku laughed in his fist and patted Yukairo on the head. You're cute. Do you know that? Yukairo frowned under his hand. But demons come to you. You don't go to them, but let's eat for now. The night went on with Yukairo excitedly asking Izuku about demon slaying and swordsmanship, with Yukairo reluctantly joining and then slowly warming up to Izuku when he saw he had no intention, that he wanted to force him and his brother to become a demon slayer. In the end, Izuku decided to give the boys 2 months to determine if they wanted to move with him. But it was a decision that he came to hate with a passion. Tanjiro asked, Why did you regret the decision, Reiju-san? Did something bad happen? Reiju sighed in exasperation. It's just a demon attacked them later on, and I barely managed to arrive on time to save them. But Yui lost an arm to the demon, which impeded his ability to become a demon slayer, so he was kind of forced to sit on the backlines working as a medic. It was a dark and cloudy night. Izuku was rushing as fast as he could to reach the twins' house. He didn't know why, but he was having a bad feeling about this night. He could feel the twins were in danger. He made his way up the mountain like a bullet only to see the door of the house open and Mukairo hacking at a demon. Izuku made quick work of the demon. After calming Mukairo down, he went to the small shed the boys called home only to be greeted by a brutal sight. Mukairo was lying on the ground with one of his hands chopped off and blood filling the place. Mukairo made his way to his brother and hugged him. "Nai-san, please stay strong. Don't die." Izuku worked quickly, ripping part of his uniform and putting it on the wound to apply pressure. He held Mukairo in his arms bridal style and said, "Mui, jump on my back. Your brother needs immediate medical attention." The boy did as he was told as Izuku sped toward the butterfly mansion in hopes of saving the other boy's life. Reiju scratched his chin, barely made it on time. Kanny told me that if I had been 5 minutes late, the boy might have died. He rubbed his forehead. Should have never given them the choice of moving in with me. I should have knocked Mukairo out and taken them both with me. Purgatory replied, "Don't blame yourself. If you did this, you might have made the situation even worse." Izuku nodded. He's right. What you did was the best course of action at the time. You can't blame yourself for what happened. I'm sure he feels that way too. Reiju nodded in acceptance. Kanikacho was being pushed against the wall. It was supposed to be a simple reconnaissance mission where she checked out an old temple where demon activity was reported. The report said women would enter the temple only to never come out. When she first came, everything checked out. The place turned out to be some kind of a cult. She was about to leave when the leader came out, and her blood ran cold. It was an upper moon and not just any upper moon. It was upper moon 2. The black-haired woman was planning to retreat and grab her sister to make her way to the compound and bring reinforcements. But all that was thrown outside the window when the demon noticed and attacked. He was very strong, too strong. The way he talked to her made her also feel pity. He seemed to be devoid of emotions. Right now, she was pushed against a wall, and the demon prepared to strike her only for her to get pushed out of the way and the demon to get his hands cut off. She looked at her savior and smiled. Izuku was panting heavily. "I'm really glad. I made it on time." Kanao hugged Reiju. "Thank you for saving Kanny." The green-haired boy patted her on the head. Izuku hummed happily. "I'm happy that my versions bring happiness to other people." He looked at Purgatory, or whatever form of justice you bring, dark, cruel, and miserable. Purgatory flipped him off. Yeah, just live in a fantasy league." Kaya hugged him from the side, telling him to be more like this. Tanjiro looked at the box beside Reiju. "I wonder who is inside the box." Reiju looked at him with deadpan, shaking his head in disapproval. The box began to shake and Reiju gulped. "This isn't going to end well. This seriously isn't going to end well for me, at least." The door of the box opened and a little girl walked out of it. She had long black hair and pale violet eyes which looked demonic. She had a bamboo stick in her mouth. Reiju bit his hand in regret as the girl walked to him and hugged his side, making facepalm. Kanao screamed, "How did my sister become a demon?" Discord, who was on the side hiding a broken lock with his foot. Let's move on to the question section. The 24th universe. Reiju sighed as he patted the demon girl on the head. "It seems that you woke up. I hoped you'd stay inside the box till that nutcase lets go back home. But apparently, fate has other plans." He turned to glare at Discord, running his finger across his neck, promising him pain. Discord then clapped his hands as Kanao took a demonized Kanny from Reiju. "Okay, questions?" He ducked under a sword attack from a very pissed-off Reiju who wanted to bite off his head. Kanao, who was struggling to contain Kanny. "Who the hell did my older sister turn into a demon?" Kanny managed to free herself and went to Reiju, hiding behind him and looking at Kanao with tearful eyes. "I can answer that. First, the whole lot of you are confused about how I know about quirks even though I'm in the Tashio period. Well, to answer this question, what you were seeing was my previous life." A lot of gasps arose. "I'm still not sure what happened, but someone used his quirk on me to save my life after Let's not get into that. He was a friend in my old life and his quirk ironically enough makes people relive their previous life when looks at them while slowing their body functions for a couple of minutes." As for Kanny, there's no need to answer. This isn't her per se, but her reincarnation from the Tashio era because there is a bit of difference between the two versions. Let's just say the reason she is a demon is that one bitch of a demon managed to escape death's grasp and became the new demon king, and he made her into a demon to be his queen. He sent her into the USJ to eat her first human, and I helped her regain her humanity, not her memories. As of right now, she only remembers me, Chiomai, Genya, and Miui. Sorry, Kanao, but she doesn't remember you. She currently has the mental capacity of a 5-year-old, though she knows how to fight on reflex or body memory. It's been a hard year in UA because fighting villains isn't enough. I have demons to fight too. Good thing Iguro pulled his weight into helping fight those monsters. Tanjiro hissed. I guess Iguro-sen wasn't too pleased about the fact that demons are back or weren't defeated at all to begin with, and some demon king was growing in power in the dark. Reiju chuckled. I woke him at 2 a.m. and told him this. Let's say he wasn't too happy. He thought this life would be the one where he'd get his happily ever after. Though he could have brought extra help, but he refused to bring Mitsuri's incarnation into this, which was his wife. Kanao gave a sad smile. Well, at least he got what he wanted. Reiju frowned a little. Pity, I like to tease him. Now, he teases me about me and Kani. Momo then coughed into her fist. Can we now ask other questions regarding your previous life? Reiju ushered her to carry on, so Momo asked, well, I want to know, who were you talking about and what was that thing you were supposed to do like him? And who is your first Sugoku and why's he a bitch? Momo didn't miss the twitch in his eyebrow, meaning it was a sensitive subject. Reiju sighed and answered, let's backward. The reason that he's a bitch is that he betrayed the Demon Slayer Corps and became a demon. Everyone gasped. Savior gasps to the end. He was a student that Gigi adopted after I went to the final selection. To be honest, I always had a bad feeling about him, but Gigi told me to give him a chance, so I didn't complain. But so good this did us. The thing I was supposed to do was seppuku. Everyone's eyes widened in fear. He was my student, and before that Gigi's student. Gigi killed himself immediately. I didn't know till later on. I was about to do it if Kani, Mukairo, and Zenitsu didn't interfere, asking Oyakata-sama to find a way to solve this. Luckily for me back then, he did. He said that if I or any of my students kill him then. Achako asked in horror. Why did you have to kill yourself? He's the one who chose to become a demon. Why do you have to take the weight of someone else's actions? Izuku answered, it was because he was Reiju's responsibility. He was a Hashira, the highest rank in the entire organization. To have a student of the highest figures there go to the enemy's side is a huge stain on them. Reiju nodded. Yeah, Kani didn't take this so easily. She kept talking with Oyakata-sama with the other two for hours on end, or rather his wife, until the woman came to a middle ground where both sides met. Reiju nodded. But still, I wished I was there when his head was lobed off his body. Sato asked, okay, that seems grim, but I don't know what to say. Oh, right. What do you mean by waking up to a demon attack? You said you were in our world, so how did this happen? Reiju hummed, well, to be honest, I was dying. Something happened to me and I was dying. The man who used his quirk on me slowed my body functions so much it allowed me to go into hibernation, but my consciousness was forced to relive my previous life realistically. What was at least 10 years for me, there were about 10 days in real life. When I woke up, I started training. Sato nodded as his sweat dropped. But you technically never answered my question. Monoma asked, wait, you trained to be a hero. Why? Everyone looked at Monoma. You spent an entire lifespan fighting demons. Why did you decide to hold your sword back up when you could go and find the girl you love to live your happily ever after like your friend? Reiju shrugged. It's because I can't live a normal life. Izuku laughed while Purgatory and Discord hummed in agreement. Tanjiro asked him, wait, how was your relation with the rest of the Hashira? And how many were you? He remembered the previous world where Izuku seemed to have good relations with the other Hashiras. Oh, and did Rengoku die during the fight with Akaza? Reiju, as for the number, you should that they're always 9. Gyomai, Seimi, Iguro, Mitsuri, Kani, Kyujuro, Tenjin, Jiyu, and myself. Oh, right, in other worlds, Shinobu and Mui became Hashira, but no, in this world they are Tsugoku. Mui is my student while Shinobu was Kani's. Well, Iguro was my friend and so was Rengoku. Mitsuri was like a little sister. Gyomai was my mentor at one point, so I respect him highly. Tenjin reminded me of a disco ball, but we had a good friendship. Kani was my girlfriend, he said while stroking the little demon's head. As for Seimi, well, I wouldn't say we hated each other, but I wrestled with him whenever I had the chance. Ji was a loner. Tanjiro's sweat dropped. Why would you want to do that, Shinazugawa-san? I mean, he was rude. Reiju cut him off. He disrespected Oyakata-sama. No one disrespects him. Plus, it's always fun getting a rise out of him. I'm 100% sure he's Katsuki's ancestor, so it was like payback for the bullying Bakugo put me through. Everyone's sweat dropped at the logic. As for your last question, Rengoku survived. I was there when I helped him fight off Akaza, but I have to say that Akaza was a monster. Fighting Jayachiro was a little easy compared to fighting Akaza, but in the end, we killed him with Tenjin. Discord laughed. Well, that was entertaining. But now, it's time for Mini-Me to give his opinion about this world. He put a mic in front of the boy who blinked. So, what do you have to say? The boy blinked a little. Well, it was a very interesting world. Unlike that one, living one life only to live another directly after the first one was kinda cool. I like the idea of second lives, makes me wonder what my previous life was like. Purgatory tried to answer him, but Gaia gagged him with a wooden stick. But I think the coolest thing is I might become the first quirkless hero in this world, so this might be cool. Reiju smirked in pride. Discord nodded. Well, then, it's time for the Wheel of Eternal Embarrassment. He then kicked it and made it spin around. Come on, land on something good and juicy. The wheel finally stopped and didn't disappoint Discord's thirst for chaos. It landed on a world that said the separated Todoroki twins. Izuku hummed, so in this world, Shoto and I are twins. But his mom separated us at birth. Shoto nodded before saying, this might mean I will hate you at first. Rei Himura was sitting in her room with classical music blasting through the room. The white-haired woman was happily sipping her tea which the nurses made for her. She rewatched the sports festival where her two sons fought. The one she gave away always saw her ironically enough while the one she kept was never there. Izuku and Shoto, her twin babies, separated at birth to make sure at least one of them had a decent childhood away from their father's machinations. Izuku was the choice. He had bright pink hair similar to her grandfather who died before she ever met Endeavor. Shoto was the one to be kept and endure the torture Endeavor had to dish out. It was like fate took pity on her after she mentally broke down. One day, Izuku came with his mom who was a nurse at the hospital, and from there she began to talk with him whenever he came with his mother. It wasn't the best to watch your son grow, but it's still better than nothing. Rei sighed. At least, one of my babies had a happy life, and from the looks of it, I took a part in his life. The woman clipped her hands a little in happiness. Purgatory gave a thumbs up. Good choice. Better than most times where you hate one of them in favor of the other. This one is one of the best worlds I visited. The woman's smile grew bigger. She chose to ignore the rest of the statement where she is a bad mother. Taoya hummed. Did any of us find out about our long-lost sibling? He then smiled. Also, what do I do when I find out that I have a sibling whose mom gave away? Discord replied. You were the one who found out. You were jealous of him for some reason. He stopped for a moment. Even you didn't know why you were jealous. Taoya crossed his arms and nodded in agreement. The woman then noticed her room was getting hot for some reason. Took him long enough. I thought he would have been here the moment Izuku used his quirk at the sports festival. The woman couldn't help but chuckle at herself knowing that Izuku had a quirk that allowed him to use fire and ice from any part of his body. Talk about the world's largest middle finger. Enji whistled in appreciation. I have to admit you got me good, Rei. Never thought you had it in you. Reiju replied. Believe me, when I traveled the multiverse, I saw her do worse things. Izuku looked at him as Reiju added. That's a story for another time. You don't need to find out about it now. Izuku nodded as the girls hugged and pulled him toward them. Suyu said, Izuku-kun, please don't start asking questions because we're trying to watch. You can grill him later on. Izuku scratched his chin in embarrassment. The door was kicked off its hinges with Endeavor storming into the room with his quirk aflare, making Rei use her quirk to cool the room down. Do you mind? I'm trying to enjoy my book. The woman pointed to a book she was reading. Endeavor roared. Don't play dumb with me. Woman, what did you do the day Shoto was born? Rei tilted her head. So, there was a chance he still didn't know that Izuku was his son. Good. But if he did, she had a contingency plan that would ward him off for the time being. That boy Shoto was fighting. Endeavor walked up to her. Who is he? Did you cheat on me? Or better yet, did you have another child the day Shoto was born? Rei hummed. I don't know anything what you're talking about. She put her cup of tea down. Although, you shouldn't be surprised if anyone tried to do the same thing you did, Enji. She walked up to him and patted his cheek. There are a lot of scumbags like you out there. Natsuo hummed. Well, Mom, you're seriously on fire. You just burnt Dad figuratively and literally. Rei bowed down. I wish I was this strong when I was still living with you kids. I might have made him stop, but I was just too weak-willed and afraid of him. Discord added. Well, in some worlds when Taoya began his meltdown, Rei was the one who saved the day. She gave him a well-deserved slap on the face that knocked him on a loop and a verbal dressing that made an 11-year-old Taoya drop his obsession. Taoya's eyes widened as Rei looked at him with a curious aura. The woman walked up to him as the boy said, Mom, don't you? The sound of a slap echoed through the void. Reiju said, Damn, that must have hurt. Reminds me of the times Kanny did this to me whenever I got into a fight with Seimi. The demon girl began to hit him in the face. Taoya meanwhile was too shocked to even respond to this as a single thought echoed through his head. Did Mom just fucking slap me on the face to make me stop obsessing about killing Shoto? Tamura was snickering on the side. Hey crispy chicken, how does it feel when Mommy hits? He was then slapped by Nana who said, Tenko, be nice. The boy crossed his arms and said, Okay, Nana. And she grabbed her by the throat and raised her to his eye level. Don't play dumb with me, woman. I know he's son. What did you do that day Shoto was born? The man remembers when he was called by the hospital, but he was busy with a case so he couldn't be there. Rei replied by kicking where it hurt, making him drop her. The man bent down from pain as the woman landed on her feet. So you found out. Yes, Izuku is your son. She looked out the window. On that day, you had twins. Even the doctors were shocked by that. It appears whenever I had sessions with my doctor, Shoto was blocking his younger brother from view. It was a hard decision, but Izuku's unique hair color made him the one who I gave away. The woman informed him. Endeavor stood up. All those years wasted. The man began to lament. He could have been trained to become the best, pushed beyond his limits to surpass All Might. Years wasted around, but it's not too late. If I can have him back, I can still train him on the way. He was stopped by Rei's laughter. What's so funny, woman? I'm not joking. I'm going to take my son back to my care to make sure he fulfills his role as my rightful successor. I have no use for Shoto since he is still in his little rebellion against me. His brother will be. Everyone looked at Endeavor as All Might said, seriously, Endeavor, I don't get it. Why are you obsessed with being number one? It's like it would change anything. You'd still be a hero. You'd still be saving people and fighting villains. It's nothing but a position at the end of the day. Endeavor groaned, I know, but it's just, I don't know. I just wanted to surpass you. Setsuna then said, I wonder what Todoroki's mom has up her sleeve to stop his father in his tracks. Shoto replied, whatever it is, it has to be really good to make my dad stop. The boy knew that his mom had to have something very juicy to make his dad back down because nothing else would work. Rei replied, you will never take him because I took precautions. She walked up to him. If you ever lay a hand on him or try to take him from his family, I will stream all of your dirty laundry for the entirety of Japan to find out. I wonder how Japan will react when they find their number 2 hero is abusing his own family. Endeavor crossed his arms. You're bluffing. You don't have anything on me, woman. Am I though? Rei retorted, I made copies of the videos from when you trained Talia and Shoto. I also have photos of the burns and bruises on my body, Shoto's and Talia's. She looked at a picture of Natsuo. And I'm sure Natsuo would 100% verify my words and add some of his own. Endeavor went to speak, but Rei cut him off, and don't bother. The evidence is with a friend of mine, so you won't reach them easily. And even if you did, this friend has a certain detective with a truth-telling quirk. If you attack her, well, you can see where this is going. Endeavor looked like he was about to boil, but said, this isn't over. I will have my son back. Rei looked as Endeavor left and scoffed. I'd like to see you try. I will protect his happiness. The woman looked at her hand, which had a very sharp icicle, even if I have to go to hell itself. Wow, this escalated quickly, Discord said with wide eyes. I mean, this got out of hand fast. Discord looked at Rei. You're a savage, Rei-san. You scare me. The woman began to whistle and looked away from embarrassment. It was cool though to see herself like this. Shoto looked at his mom. Hey, mom, can you do the same thing, but jab the icicle into dad's chest? The woman gasped in shock while Fayumi began chastising her brother for even suggesting something as horrible as this. Endeavor mainly sighed. Purgatory moved his head toward Gaia. Man, I know I had it bad, but this is seriously sad and depressing. The dear lady nodded her head in agreement while Reiju had a blank face. I still can't believe you did that Midoriya on national television, Ibara said while pointing her finger at Izuku. It was so sinful. Didn't you think about how it might affect your image? Izuku, who was sitting with Kendo waiting for Vlad to come, asked. Don't you think Izuku hummed as Ibara said. So Izu-kun is in our class. The girl had a confused expression. But aren't people with strong quirks usually in class 1A? How come he's in class 1B? Nezu coughed. I can answer that, young Shizaki. We have a rule in UA that 2 students with the same type of quirk aren't allowed to be in the same class because the teacher might train one and leave the other alone, thinking that since they have the same quirk in theory then their training should be identical. Nezu clapped his hands. This happened multiple times before I came up to this decision. Ibara accepted his raising and nodded. Izuku rubbed his chin. I always wonder what would have happened if I ended in class 1B. Discord smirked. Don't worry. You'll find out soon. Deku in class 1B will come here eventually. Izuku's sweat dropped as Kendo hugged him. I can't wait to see a world where you're in our class. Kendo carried. I think the word Midoriya is looking for is giving it more than it looks like. She then turned to the boy. But I have to admit, slapping a girl's rear on national television is something we didn't expect you to do. Izuku looked at them. Well, it was the only way I was taught to calm her down. The waist choked on his energy drink. Who the fuck told you to calm your girlfriend down? You need to slap her rear for the entire world to see. Ibara was a blushing mess by now. Izuku tried to be as small as he could right now. Why would this version of himself listen to a pervert's ideas? The girls looking at him were torn between laughing or ripping him a new one. His counterparts, on the other hand, were laughing their asses off with their companions shaking them to stop. Or in Reiju's case, getting slapped rapidly to stop laughing because his face was turning blue. Izuku hummed. Well, Auntie Mitsuki told me the best to handle a Bakugo woman is to show them who's boss. She said I should slap Katsumi there to show her I mean business. He then rubbed his chin. She also said it would make it funnier later down the line, but I didn't know what she meant. He looked at Awase. And Katsumi isn't my girlfriend. She's my childhood friend. The bandana-wearing boy replied. Bullshit. You looked like you were one step away from ripping Tetsu's ripoff into pieces when you saw him talking to her. Izuku looked away and whistled. Bakugo was now seeing red. He was put through many hops. All these worlds that show how Deku was great are painful but entertaining nonetheless. A cool-ass version of Deku who can kill them all with a flex of his pinky was a neat addition. The recent addition was also a cool version of Deku. He just had this no-shit attitude around, but this world just pushed the envelope. Deku, I'll kill you. The boy jumped only for an elbow and the handle of a sword to meet his face. Purgatory got back to his place. Calm down, explosion boy. This isn't the most embarrassing world you'll see yourself in. In Discord's world, he turned you into a girl and eventually, you married Kirishima when he refused to turn you back into a boy because you refused to admit that Discord was cooler than All Might. Bakugo at this deflated and flopped down like a dying fish. Reiju added, come on, Katsuki. This is just fun. It's not like it's being recorded for everyone to see. He looked down at Kenny who was holding a camera. Do you have everything? The demon girl nodded, making him smile. He looked at Purgatory and gave him a thumbs up. Gaia looked at her companion. Sometimes you are pure evil. She then ruffled his hair, making him pout. But that's why I think you're the coolest person ever. He hid his face under his snake and looked away. On his face was a smile. Izuku meanwhile was steaming. This is so embarrassing. He covered his face in his hands while looking away from everyone as the girls tried to calm him down. Melissa patted him on the back. Calm down, Izuku-kun. It's not like you're doing it today. Meanwhile, Enko was giving Mitsuki an earful for trying to corrupt her son. The blonde woman in turn was laughing her ass off knowing the advice she gave her nephew. Ryuko was standing beside them. As entertaining as it is looking in our resident powerhouse's personal life, I think someone should tend to Shizaki because she passed out from lewdness. The ghost girl pointed to the vine girl who was on the ground with her hand on her forehead with a bright blush surrounding her face. Izuku sighed and took her to her seat while Kendo looked at him and shook her head. Is anyone going to tell him what his auntie truly meant, or should we allow him to live in the dark? Everyone looked at each other. Izuku's friends or close circle of friends were Kamakiri, Shizaki, Ryuko, Kendo, and Oase. All of them then said, not it. Kamakiri was the last one. Oase patted him on the back. It's up to you, tough guy. Explain to our resident ice prince what his auntie really means. The bug boy slammed his head on the table multiple times before going to Izuku and dragging him outside the room to tell him something very important. Kendo then asked, okay, does anyone know what's up with Midoriya and Todoroki? Ryuko asked, do you mean the bad blood between them or how they look like long-lost brothers? Kendo rubbed her head. Well, I was only talking about how they looked similar to each other, but now that you mentioned it, Todoroki does seem to have it out to Midoriya if the sports festival is anything to go by. She finished as Kamakiri entered the room dragging a catatonic Izuku with him. Vlad King entered the room after the boys. Well, kiddos, I have to say good work in the sports festival. He then looked at Izuku. And Midoriya, great job not allowing your class to hold back like what Monoma suggested. He wiped his forehead. Glad we dodged that bullet. Vlad's eyebrows twitched. You held back during the sports festival? On purpose? Did you lose your minds when you were training or what? Everyone then pointed at Monoma, making Vlad sigh. Aizawa rolled his eyes. And what was the point of holding back during the sports festival? Izuku came up with an explanation. Maybe they wanted to see what their opponents came do and take them out in the next round. The students of Class 1B nodded at what the boy said. Vlad began hitting his head on the ground many times, making people wonder how he didn't have a concussion before he stopped and looked at them. While your strategy does have some validation to it, it was the reason why pros saw one or more than 1B. Plus, you didn't even execute the plan carefully in the next part. You all should have waited for the right time to attack Class 1A, not from the get-go. And finally, never listen to Monoma's ideas. Don't you know that they always bring disasters? The hero class of 1B nodded their heads in agreement while Monoma scoffed at the insult. The classes ended and Izuku was heading out with his friends after they finished making their hero names with the help of Present Mike. The voice hero helped him big time in finding a suitable name. So, his code name was Hellfrost, the Ice and Fire Hero. It was cool and catchy, though he wished he could use his flames and ice together at the same time. But sadly he can't only one at a time. And if he did, he usually strained his body like he did at the USJ against the Namu or Todoroki. Speaking of Todoroki, the boy was glaring at him as he exited his class. Itsuka stood between them and glared back at Todoroki, making the boy scoff and look away. The girl looked at him and smiled. Izuku nodded. Thanks for that, Kendo. The girl grabbed her ponytail and stroked it. That's why you're my best friend. Izuku walked away with a depressed Kendo following him. Kamakiri looked at Ryuko. Should we tell him that Kendo has a massive crush on him, or should we leave him to figure it out himself while dealing with the blonde chick who wants to date him? He finished as Katsumi Bakugo exited the room, flipping him off, making the bug boy's eyebrow twitch. Bakugo was laughing like a madman. Take that, bug boy. Kamakiri launched himself at him and the two began to tumble and fight each other before both classes' respective moms pulled them from each other as Momo and Kendo said in one voice, "Stop it and act your age." The boys merely scoffed. Still, it would be amazing if this turned into some sort of love triangle. Honi said, wondering about the endless possibility of seeing some rowdy drama between the two girls and Izuku. Discord shook his head. Both girls reached an agreement to share him and tell them their feelings after the training camp when Izuku was kidnapped by Dabai to tell him his real history. Everyone looked at Dabai, who said, "This sounds like something I might do for pity revenge." At Izuku's house, Izuku and Katsumi began comparing internships. He was the first and she was the second. She looked at him. "How about Endeavor? He seems a good match for you. Plus, he might have an idea on how to use both sides of your quirk and not tire out like wet noodles." Izuku frowned. "I don't tire out like wet noodles when I overuse my quirk. That's rude and uncalled for." Katsumi rolled her eyes before she remembered something. The girl cracked her neck and looked at Izuku. "Now that I remember something, Deku, I need you to know I'm going to make you cry like the little bitch you are." Izuku gulped, knowing it was payback time. The girl chased home around the house yelling about how embarrassed she was because of what he did in the sports festival, with the boy giving apologies till the girl finally calmed down with Izuku saying, "And that is the end of that." Izuku looked at Bakugo, who seemed as cool as a cucumber. "Payback as a bitch, ain't Deku?" Izuku was standing in front of the Endeavor agency with Todoroki, who was glaring at him the entire time they were on the train together. Izuku coughed a little. "So, Todoroki, do you?" Shoto replied coldly, "I'm not here to make friends. Be quiet, and don't talk to me." He walked away from Izuku, leaving the boy bewildered. Well, that was an interesting conversation. Izuku then followed him to the agency and was welcomed by Burnin, Endeavor's #1 sidekick in the agency. Izuku wouldn't admit it out loud, but he always had a small crush on her. The flame-haired heroine smiled. "Don't worry, kid. A lot of people have a crush on me. At least, you aren't a perv about it," the woman said, making Izuku blush and almost black out. Izuku walked with the woman as she explained how things run here around the agency. He thought it was really cool. Finally, they all stood in front of Endeavor's office. The flame-haired woman said, "Okay, I'll go inside and tell the boss that you're here." She looked at Shoto. "Try not to kill each other." The boy was still glaring at Izuku, making the woman whisper, "What's his deal?" The woman entered the room and both boys could hear talking coming from inside the room. She then yelled from the inside, "You can come in here, boys. Please be in one piece. I don't want to deal with your parents if you're missing some parts." Izuku's sweat dropped a little. Both boys entered the room to be met by Endeavor, who said, "Welcome to the Endeavor agency. This week I'm going to whip you boys into shape and show you how to walk on the path of the mighty." This made Shoto growl while Izuku's sweat dropped. Izuku thought, he's really full of himself. Izuku looked at Endeavor. "You didn't actually say this to Todoroki when he came to your agency." The flame hero pretended not to hear the question because answering it was embarrassing. Back then, he was egotistical. He never thought about anything except being the #1 hero. But now that he got it, nothing truly changed. He was still fighting villains. He was still saving people. He was still the same person. No, he was worse, because at least some of the villains he fought were villains because they wanted a better life for their children. He, not so much. He can only hope that he can make it up to his family. Perhaps, someday they might forgive him and look him in the eye again. They might be able to call him Dad with pride. "I will do that. I'm sure I'll be able to do that." A voice made its way to his head. "Don't worry yourself about it too much. You can do it." He looked around and saw Purgatory looking at him with a blank expression before looking away. Endeavor was looking at his youngest son. His true youngest son. From what he understood from Rei, Izuku was the younger twin. He can understand why the woman gave him away. His hair was pink and his eyes were blue and red. While his eyes were blue, no one in his family or wife's family, according to his knowledge, had red eyes. He went under the radar. Unlike his brother, who looked like a copy of both his parents, the hero was now running ways in his head to take his son back. He was sure buying him from his family was off the table, because you don't adopt someone to get rid of him after you raised him for so many years. He could go to courts, but if Rei lived up to her threat, he was going to lose. And he sure as heck ain't going to propose a quirk marriage between his children. He was a scumbag, he knew that, but even he had standards. Everyone looked at Endeavor, who said, "What? I would never stoop that low. I have morals, you know. I'm just a bad father, not a bad person. At least, not in this world, I'm not." He saw his son's quirk action firsthand during the sports festival. The ability to produce ice and fire from any part of your body at will. But it seemed he could only use one ability at a time, unlike Shoto. He supposed he could train him to use them both, but this means he needs to have him under his wing at his house, not where Rei put him to be coddled his entire life. For now, he has to work with what he has. He could feel great things coming from his youngest son. He looked at Shoto, who seemed one step away from flipping inside. Why couldn't he be a little bit more like his sibling? He could have used both sides. With his training, Shoto could have easily surpassed all his classmates. But for some reason, he insisted on clinging to this childish rebellion of his. This won't do. He can only hope that Shoto will change with time. The man clapped his hands. "All right, brats, go to the training grounds. I will not hold back in training." and I expect you to do the same thing. This week, I'm going to make something out of you." Izuku nodded excitedly while Shoto flipped him off. With that, both boys went off to change into their hero costumes, while Endeavor remained in his office trying to find a way to reclaim his rightful heir. Shoto has outlived his usefulness. If he doesn't want to be his successor, it doesn't mean someone else can. And if Rei said she won't allow him to take his son back, he won't. He only needs a successor. He can train the kid, but still, his son needs someone to have a strong successor of his own. He looked at Vernon walking away to her office. It might just work. The flame-haired woman looked at Endeavor. "Excuse me, do I look like a piece of meat to you?" The man shook his head while Discord was laughing. Discord then said, "All right, question time, people." The 25th universe. Shoto leaned forward and rubbed his temple. "Man, this is so annoying. A world where Midoriya is my brother and I treat him like trash." The boy clapped his hands together. "Please, let me see the end of this stupidity. I hate myself for this." Now, for the questions. I suppose the most important one is how Mom managed to pass this from under my dad's nose. He's like a bloodhound when it comes to quirks and biological weapons. Furthermore, how did I react when I first saw him? I bet it wasn't very pretty. Also, how come Midoriya never looked into Izuku's background when she adopted him? It seems a little unrealistic. Yeah, did I ever find out the truth about our relationship? And what was his reaction when Dabai told him the truth? Izuku looked at Shoto and hummed. "Those are some very good questions, my sir. I hope the answers are good. And not vague as always with those two." He pointed at his counterparts. Discord pouted. "I don't give vague answers." He hugged Purgatory. "That is this guy's thing." Purgatory snapped his finger and his shadow's hand turned into a mallet, smacking the Chaos Lord away. "Anyway." Discord rubbed his face. "Well, your father never looked into the process of Rei's pregnancy. He only wanted the baby, so that was a good thing. Plus, in this world, Rei went to high school, so she had some basic education and some relationships with different people, which was good. One of her friends worked in an adoption agency, which helped her facilitate things and the transfer of Izuku. Now, as your reaction, your initial thought was to attack him the moment he used his fire. Yeah, Eraserhead wasn't going to like that if it happened, but you controlled yourself. You did glare at him with annoyance as much as you could." Shoto facepalmed. As for Mom, she never looked much into this because when she adopted Izuku, she was told he was a child whose mother wanted to remain unknown, so she and his father didn't do too much digging into it. I mean, who in his right mind would look into the history of a child with an anonymous mother? Yeah, when you were going to pack your stuff to go to the dorms, you went through some stuff in the attic, so you found a box of family pictures. There you found a picture of your mom when she gave birth to you along with Izuku. At that moment, everything clicked, and if anything, I made you hate him harder because, in your eyes, Izuku uses his fire freely without considering his mom's feelings. Shoto began hitting his head rapidly. For the final question, Izuku was justly disturbed. Once he was free, he made his way to Rei, where he confronted her and eventually, after much persuasion, managed to get the truth out of her. He was mad, tired, and annoyed. It took him a month before he talked to his mother. His real mother again, where they ironed things out. Shoto shook his head. Why is this version of me an idiot? Why does he hate Midoriya for using his fire? It's not like he knows anything about our family. Reiju rubbed his head. Well, you aren't known for rationality, my friend. Purgatory snorted. Rationality isn't one of the strong suits of the Todoroki family. He looked at Shoto. I saw it firsthand many times, some of which led to the death of some people. Shoto gulped as Fayumi protested. Hey, stop bullying my baby bro. He's the most rational person I've ever known. Everyone looked at her with Shigaraki saying, press X for doubt. Discord clapped his hands. Okay, let's move on before we start touching uncomfortable subjects for some people. He looked at the other unwilling participants. Do you have other questions? Ibara asked. Now when Izuku discovered the truth about his heritage, what did he do regarding Endeavor? Surely, he couldn't have taken this down and continued training with the man like nothing happened. So, what do you know? This might be the smartest question yet. Discord thought. The answer is quite complex. Izuku knew if he acted suspicious, the man would catch on and find out eventually, so he tried to act as normally as possible. Rei warned him that Enji wanted to take him back, so he didn't want the man to get an excuse to take him from Mom, because at the end of the day, even though Rei is his biological mother, and Ko is still the mother who raised him from when he was a baby, he couldn't bear being separated away from her. Momo wiped a tear away. This is so touching. It's like one of those romance novels that I like to read. She shook her head. Okay, my question. Why was Todoroki jealous of Zuzu when he found out the truth about their relationship? Purgatory laughed. Haha, the better question is why wouldn't he feel jealous? Discord appeared beside Reiju and leaned the man's head. Okay, to answer your question. Shoto felt angry that his brother got away from the horrible torture that his father's training was, while Shoto was forced to endure like the horrible stuff his father putting him through. Shoto shook his head. I honestly feel disgusted with my actions. Kaibara asked. Did Todoroki ever confront Midoriya with the truth? Discord laughed. Yeah, and it was the funniest shit ever. He told Izuku that he was going to prove to their mother he was the better son by using her ice and not hurting her by using his father's fire. Izuku's reaction was to call him crazy and to keep him out of his family drama. Mina remarked, that was a little harsh on Izuku's end. Natsuo replied, I don't blame. If I were adopted and found out my real family had this baggage, I'd try my best to disappear from their sight to stay safe from the blast zone. Taoya crossed his arms. Yeah, pretty sure I'd do the same thing too. This is very entertaining. Discord smiled. But though, Shoto cannot navigate difficult situations like this, especially if he is still stuck in his old mindset where he sees his quirk as part belonging to his mother and the other belonging to his mom. He even actually told Izuku that if he ever wanted to have a relationship with him, Izuku should stop using his father's flames. Izuku bit his lip and nodded. Yeah, I can see why I called him crazy and insane. Bondo rubbed his head. Yeah, but that makes you wonder what happened during the sports festival. Midoriya only helped Todoroki because Todoroki told him about his sob story. Shoto glared at the glue-using giant because he called his horrible childhood a sob story. Izuku was about to go, but someone grabbed him and took him to lunch. Discord chuckled. Katsumi grabbed him by the scruff of his gym uniform and took him to eat, telling him the icy hot bastard can wait a couple of minutes. But Izuku forgot about him. Shoto looked at Bakugo, who was laughing on the ground. Wherever I go, I'm still the boss. Izuku looked at him, the boss who got spanked on live television for everyone to watch and see. Izuku's girlfriends cheered him on for this brutal burn that even Bakugo couldn't handle because steam began to rise from his face. Discord looked at the scene and asked, are there any more questions before I see what Mini-Me thinks about this world? AFO smiled. How did Dabai convince Tamura to kidnap young Midoriya? It's hard to convince him to do anything. And I'm talking from experience. Discord hummed. Well, Dabai didn't say anything. He just kidnapped him and managed to calm down Tamura, telling him this would be a triple strike to the heroes since 3 students were kidnapped. He looked at Takoyami. Yeah, you were kidnapped. Sorry, dude. Takoyami nodded. Revelry in the dark. Ochako looked at him. He keeps saying that. Discord looked at Izuku. Now, what do you have to say about this Mini-Me? I bet you love this world, especially since you were born in the world's greatest dysfunctional family. Taoya flipped him off while Endeavor shrugged helplessly as he looked at his family. Izuku rubbed the back of his head. It's complicated a little. On one hand, being Endeavor's son is like a nightmare. I mean, an absent father is bad enough, but an abusive one is a nightmare. On the other hand, he does change, so it isn't all bad. Discord nodded. Now, let the wheel of eternal embarrassment roll till it lands on something. Discord kicked, making it roll till it landed on the world titled The Four Sons. Izuku titled his head in confusion. So, in this world, I have 3 siblings and we're all fighting to become the #1 hero or All Might's successor. The boy scratched his face. That's a recipe for disaster. He turned around to see Aizawa holding a sign that said Disaster Children, making the green-haired boy's sweat drop a little. Purgatory shook his head. Well, not exactly, but watch and believe me, you're going to love it. Izuku raised his eyebrow. And no, it doesn't have All Might being ripped apart by me if that's what you're worried about. It's more like All Might wants to rip you apart. That statement made both Izuku and All Might feel worried about this world and what it holds. The scene in front of them changed into the moment where Bakugo was captured by the sludge villain and was being suffocated with All Might leaning against a lamppost. Good memories, Izuku said, looking at Bakugo. Ain't it, Kaken? The blonde scoffed and flipped him, making everyone laugh at the boy's reaction. The explosion shook the ground as All Might clutched the lamppost tightly as he trembled in pain and self-loathing. He couldn't see the sludge villain he'd allowed to run free, but he didn't need to see because he was hearing everything from the place he was standing. He could the explosions caused by the boy's quirk, the villain's laughter as he squeezed out the boy's life. The heroes cursed their inability to save the boy for one reason or another. And finally, the people wondering where is All Might since he was the hero chasing this villain. All Might sighed. Yeah, that by far wasn't my best performance. I should have been more attentive and found a better way to contain the sludge villain. He rubbed his head. Though putting the sludge villain in my pocket wasn't all the brightest idea on my end. Reiju rolled his eyes. Be thankful that Izuku didn't jump off the top of the building due to your wisdom. All Might flinched and rubbed his shoulder. Just the thought that he made his successor kill himself made his skin crawl. It was a horrible thought. Wood's a voice cut through the crowd like a knife cut through butter. The voice was determined, young, and unafraid. All Might couldn't see him, but the voice carried on. I can make you fireproof, but you'd still the pain of the attacks. All Might heard the wooden hero groan in annoyance before yelling, Do it, kid. There is no time. All Might then heard Kamui Woods running toward the villain yelling, Unhand the child, you damned villain. Although he couldn't see everything, All Might could make out the shape of wooden tendrils making their way toward the villain and grabbing the boy. The wooden hero began to groan in pain once he felt the heat, but pushed through regardless and managed to pluck the boy free from the villain, who was blasted to bits by the freed hostage. All Might looked at Izuku and clapped his hands. That's a wonderful quirk, young Midoriya. I'm sure you'd be able to become a wonderful hero with it. This made Izuku blush and hide his face while his girlfriends began praising and giving him hugs and kisses. Discord then laughed. Oh no, you didn't see his real quirk yet. His real quirk is going to be awesome, but will make you go on the deep end. He smirked, good luck, and say goodbye to your brain cells. Izuku wondered what his quirk might be. Melissa said, whatever it is, I don't think Uncle Might will go crazy because of it. Discord, Purgatory, and Reiju looked at her with a deadpan, yeah, sure. Like he never did that before. Momo raised her hand. You're talking like All Might is going to try and smash him into the sun. The girl received nothing, but silence making her feel a little bit worried. Why was this All Might so worrying to those three, or at least the ones that can travel between worlds? That's a wonderful quirk, kid. Kamui Woods thanked the young man as the crowd began to disappear from All Might's view. I'm sure you're going to make a wonderful firefighter or support hero. All Might had to agree with the wooden hero's statement. Actually, that isn't my quirk, the boy admitted, making All Might feel his stomach twisting in pain before adding, it's my grandpa's. I was born with 2 quirks and one of them allows me to give and take quirks to a certain degree. All Might looked at the boy and he felt his heart fall. The boy had snow-white hair and green emerald eyes. If you take the eyes out, he might be mistaken for a teenage AFO. Toshinori needed to make a few calls right now. Izuku then opened his mouth, so that's why All Might wants to rip me apart. The boy stayed still for a moment before chuckling. Ha, I'm in danger. His girlfriends shook their heads. All Might lowered his head in shame as Discord patted his back. There, All Might. At least, you didn't go all out of your way to make his life a living hell like you did with some versions. All Might, I hope you're foolish as you look, AFO said as he reclined in his chair using a quirk-dubbed electric sight which allowed him to see through security cameras or devices if he could hack them. UAS security system is hard to hack given that it constantly updates its systems. He was exceptionally happy today because All Might saw one of his sons, and the dumb hero happened to hear his son talking about his ability to give and take quirks. He truly hoped All Might's fear of him would make the hero fumble and do something stupid. AFO smiled. He had 4 wonderful sons on their path to becoming something great. Endeavor nodded. Yep, this is going to give me nightmares. 4 children of AFO. Ochako remarked. I think the true nightmare is All Might's paranoia making Deku side with AFO. Everyone nodded and looked at All Might's side. I hope I don't do something stupid. I do. AFO looked at All Might. I, personally, think you're going to do something stupid that will lead my son into my waiting hands. Please, All Might, do it. It will make this so easy for me. AFO loved all of his children dearly. His first child was Tamura. Even though he was adopted, he took to the family heritage like fish to water. Then there was Nine, who was his father's favorite with a mentality that believed the strong is always right, so he was on his way to becoming a great villain. Then there was Kai, the wayward child of the family with aversion to quirks. And there was Izuku, the only one who hadn't fallen to the clutches of villainy yet. Of course, he made Dr. Garaki add some of his quirk factor into the last 3 to see if they could develop a version of FO. Do it. Make my son come to me, All Might. Everyone yelled at the hero. Don't do anything stupid, All Might. The hero flinched. Nezu was sipping his tea to calm his nerves. The conversation with All Might after he barged into his face yelling like a headless chicken about AFO having a child was nerve-wracking. Adding to that, the conversation was a complete waste of time. The blonde hero insisted on arresting the kid and taking him to Tartarus, something Sir Night-Eye agreed with. Gran Torino and Recovery Girl were on the side not taking anyone's position. And then there was the good detective and himself. They were more curious about the child rather than afraid like All Might. Turns out after a long conversation, All Might was a firm believer in nature rather than nurture, so Nezu didn't tell him the boy was going to attend this year's entrance exam. Izuku looked at All Might. I can't believe I'm saying this, but you need therapy, All Might. Gran Torino shook his head. He doesn't need therapy, but he needs to grow up and have a pair. AFO laughed. Oh, believe me, he needs more than that. Everyone looked at the villain. All Might needs to have a brain transplant to make sure he can think at any given moment. Tamura laughed at the joke, but received a whack from his grandma for all his trouble, making the man-child grumble under his breath. I'm sorry, Nana. Right now, he was in his office with Eraserhead, who was looking at the screen. So, that's the kid who made All Might piss his pants. Aizawa saw a white-haired boy talking with 2 applicants. He doesn't seem like much. He looks like a regular kid. Do you remember the wound All Might showed us? Aizawa nodded. He believes that the kid is the son of a villain whom he wounded him and wants the kid to be treated like a threat, even though the kid never met him in his life, and they were only related due to a sperm bank. Aizawa rubbed his forehead. So, he believes the kid is evil by association. So illogical. He then looked at Nezu. Is that why you didn't let him watch the entrance exam? Of course not. That would be deceptive. The rat god thing sipped a little of his tea. All I told him, since he isn't a full member of the faculty, He didn't have rescue points voting rights. So in other words, he's only allowed to watch the recordings after the fact so it doesn't affect his judgment. In other words, Nezu didn't want a scandal during the tests. Aizawa snorted, looking back at the trio of friends. So what are their quirks? Nezu looked at All Might. Yes, it would be quite the scandal if All Might suddenly attacked one of the students, saying he is a villain in the middle of the entrance exam. He put down a martini he was sipping. Though All Might wouldn't make it outside the gates because I would have talked to him and showed him what happens to people who anger me. Izuku curled up to the girls, who were also a little unnerved. Principal Nezu, you are terrifying. This made the rat bear thing laugh gleefully, seeing the effect he had on others. AFO sighed fondly. Man, if All Might was to do it, I would have had the final piece fall into place. Purgatory, who was playing cards with Reiju, Gaia, and Discord, replied, don't worry, he always does it. He frowned as Gaia beat him in his 2 other versions. And I always have to clean up his messes. At this point, I'm used to it. All Might meanwhile had a cloud over his head and sighed due to the stupidity of some of his versions. He wished those types of him were a rare breed, not something common. Midoriya is unique. He has 2 quirks. His first quirk is a limited version of his biological father, which allows him to give and take a quirk. The other quirk is a nature quirk, which allows him to control many elements including fire, water, etc. So, he's a class 10. I already have Yaoyorozu, so now I have 2. Wonderful. The man rubbed his forehead in frustration, but Nezu could see the gears turning in the man's head. What about the other 2's quirks? Nezu smiled. Well, Denki Kaminari used to have an electric quirk that used to fry his brain whenever he went over his limit. But after a generous donation to Izuku Midoriya from a retired electrician who knew his grandfather, he now has better control over his quirk, due Midoriya giving the quirk of the retired man. Aizawa hummed. And the other one, the girl. Nezu looked. Oh, right. She used to have a gravity-canceling quirk, but Midoriya gave her his grandmother's quirk, which is low-level telekinesis. Denki looked at Izuku. You are the boss, Midoriya. He pushed the girls away and hugged him. Can you please find a way to give me a kui? The boy couldn't continue his statement because a vine wrapped around him and threw him away toward the other boys. Ibara then puffed her cheeks. Go and find your boyfriend. Not ours. The girls hugged the boy possessively, making him sweat drop and look at someone to help him. I'm going to cry if he becomes a villain because of me, All Might said before remembering one of the previous worlds. If I cause him to become a villain another time. Complementary quirks. Aizawa hummed in amusement. This is bound to bring him a couple of dedicated friends. You mentioned he also has a fire immunity quirk. Nezu laughed. No, he gave it to a quirkless child who wanted to become a hero. Nezu sipped more from his tea. Such a wonderful future hero. Don't you agree with me, Aizawa? Aizawa didn't reply. Do you know if he has easy other quirks in his arsenal? Nezu laughed. Aizawa looked at the rat bear thing. I don't. What is worse, the fact you took interest in him or the fact you don't know something? Nezu laughed harder, making Aizawa gain a chill in his spine. With Izuku, the moment he heard Present Mike give the go sign to start the exams, the boy went into the arena city and began to rip through robots left and right as he used his quirk to mold the asphalt into different shapes. It was easy for him. It was easy until the ground began to shake, making him look at something. Is that legal? Cementos looked into the sky. Am I going to have someone help me? Is this a gift from heaven? Nezu laughed. Oh dear, Cementos. There is no one going to help you. Never in a million years. Aizawa was watching everything in the watching room. The hero hummed in approval. The 3 friends were doing good. Yororaka was using her quirks to make everything weightless, then used them as battling rams against other robots. Kaminari covered his body in electricity and fried robots as he passed by them. And finally, Midoriya was using the asphalt as his personal plaything. He looked at a hopeful Cementos, but one look at Nezu made him realize the man's wish wasn't going to happen anytime soon. Nezu then unleashed the zero-pointer. It was all fun and games until someone was pinned on the ground with the zero-pointer approaching them. They were about to ask Mike to destroy the robot, but Midoriya ripped the robot apart. They looked at the screen and saw Izuku trying to help the kid, only for the kid to slap his hand away angrily. The teachers were sure to keep an eye on that student. Hey, isn't that Shinso? Mina asked, looking closely at the boy who slapped Izuku's hand away. The purple-haired student rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, that's me. Back then, I was salty. A waste deadpan. Dude, the word salty doesn't even come close to describing how you were. He crossed his arms. Need I remind you of the assault that you carried against Class 1 when they barely survived a villain attack? Everyone looked at him. What? Kendo replied bluntly. Weren't you a part of the idiot brigade that stormed to Class 1 too? The boy whistled and looked away as Tetsu suddenly found the endless void interesting. Awase pressed his fingers together. Well, in my defense, he grabbed Monoma and put him in the front. He was the one who told Tetsu to go to Class 1A, so in theory, it's his fault. The blonde boy gave the black-haired boy a dry look. Yeah, thanks for throwing me under the bus. Discord clapped his hands. All right, let's move back to our wonderful world. We'll have enough time for that when we reach the world where OFA Deku joins Class 1B. He chuckled. You'll see something that will cause your mind to do mental flips. Taking a happy breath, Izuku strolled into a coffee shop he noticed while walking to UA. His parents weren't expecting him back for a few hours, so why not have some fun? He looked around and he could see it was full of students who finished the entrance exam like him, given by their nervous muttering and hushed whispers to each other. He was also nervous, but he believed he had done well enough to earn himself a spot in the hero course. He couldn't disagree that the whole situation was nerve-wracking though. Izuku eventually found a spot with one sole occupant, so he went to it and asked the person in it, "Do you mind if I sit here with you?" The occupant looked at him startled. She was a girl about his age with white hair and red streaks going through it. Todoroki smiled once he saw this and practically grabbed his sister, dragging her to the boy, who shook his head. "Sorry, Shoto, but the age limit is at least 4 years older than me. And while your sister is good looking, I have to say no." He rubbed his head. "Plus, it's going to be awkward between us at work, so I prefer to keep it professional between me and your sister." Fayumi replied, "Yes, same here. Plus," the girl pressed her fingers together, "I already have a boyfriend." The entire Todoroki family was shocked. "And it's Hawks." The blonde man gulped as he felt a sudden heavy presence fall on him. He turned around to see Endeavor smiling at him. It was a smile that comes straight out of a horror movie. "So, you're dating my daughter. Prepare to perish, bird boy." Hawks ran away with the angry father chasing him. Seeing the blonde hero jumping around to avoid Endeavor's attacks was a funny sight. "Of course, there is no problem. You can sit here." The girl stuttered a little before recomposing herself. "I have no problem." Izuku couldn't help but sweat drop when he noticed her blush. Izuku coughed in his hand. "Well, thanks." He then introduced himself. "My name is Izuku Midoriya." He hoped he could help remove the awkward atmosphere between them. The girl shook her head, losing her blush. "Right. My name is Fayumi Todoroki. It's a pleasure to meet you." The girl beamed at him, making Izuku grin a little. Fayumi tilted her head. So in this world, I'm the same age as Shoto, so I suppose I'm his twin sister." The girl concluded, bandaging her boyfriend's wounds while her father glared at him. "Yeah, in this world, you were born as Shoto's twin sister," Discord said, trying to win back the money he lost in the last match against Gaia. "Even though you don't start as a hero, you eventually join the hero course." The Chaos Lord frowned when he lost another round, with the dear girl celebrating another win in poker with the three Izukus, wondering how they lost to her. Reiju looked at the world. "Man, Shoto's sister is extremely nice." He shuddered a little, remembering the smell of wisteria poison. "She's crazy." He received an unimpressed glare from his demonic companion. Izuku slapped him on the head. "Don't say that. Todoroki might get funny ideas." The girl relaxed a little, so Izuku asked, "So, did you apply to UA?" The girl nodded her head. "Me too. The written exam was annoying, but the practical helped me release some steam." He rubbed the back of his head. "I don't mean to brag, but my quirk is suited for this type of situation." He noticed the girl smiled a little. "Well, I only had the written exam." The girl put her head on the table. "It was really hard, but I didn't try out to hero course. I'm aiming for the general studies course." The boy nodded as the girl asked him, "So, you're trying to enter the hero course?" Izuku hummed an acknowledgement, making the girl add, "My older twin brother is trying the same thing, but he entered through recommendation. I hope I can meet him and become good friends." The boy smiled. "But yeah, I'm entering the hero course because it was always my dream to help others with a smile. I hope to be able to make a change in the world." All Might whistled. "Wow, I guess this version of young Midoriya is going to make a huge splash in the hero world when he enters the scene for the first time." Izuku blushed. "Thank you, All Might." He chose to ignore the unimpressed looks he was receiving from his counterpart. At this point, he was ready to go on a rant about All Might was awesome. Nezu was drinking his tea peacefully. It was his favorite brand that he bought just for the beginning of the new year. It was so delicious. Add to that, a swine who forgot his duties and was losing a battle in the court. What could make this day much better? The piece was shattered to pieces when All Might barged into the room like he had his butt on fire. Nezu smiled because he had someone to torment. "Why, hello there, All Might." All Might paled. "Oh no, I disturbed Nezu's tea time." The man gulped. "He's going to make people dance at my funeral." The man heard snickering coming from members of the faculty. Nezu laughed. "Don't worry, All Might. The rat bear thing sipped some of his tea. I'll make sure to make an example out of you for every other moron who dares to interrupt my tea time." Purgatory chuckled under his breath, earning a slap from his companion. Izuku on the hand. "I going to miss you, All Might. I hope I see you in the next life we both have. Goodbye." AFO's son is in this school, Nezu. The blonde hero yelled like a madman. "We need to call the police to arrest him." The rat bear thing slammed his hands on the table, cutting him off. "I'm well aware of his enrollment in this school," Nezu said with a stern expression. "In fact, he is aiming to become a hero. Isn't that wonderful?" He enjoyed the shocked expression on All Might's face along with Night Eye's slack jaw. Mirio's confusion, on the other hand, was a good thing. This meant All Might hadn't swayed the boy to his side yet. Night Eye stuttered. "Nezu, you have to be kidding. You just can't allow him to." Purgatory remarked. Say goodbye to being Mirio's mentor, bitch. Mirio then cut him off. Can someone explain to me what happening? Nezu looked at Mirio. All I was told is a villain made his into the school is a threat to everyone, and I have to put him down before he can do anything. Nezu glared at All Might and Night Eye. So, that's what you were told, Nezu commented before clarifying what was really going on. The reality is that a student who is the child of the villain who gave your mentor his injury entered our school, but to be safe, the boy never had contact with his biological father. The only relationship they have is that the man is a sperm donor. All Might meanwhile looked away before shaking his head. Nezu, we need to stop him now. This power is corrupting in nature. He's destined to become. Nezu smiled. Complete that sentence, and the whole AFO gave you will be nothing but a love tap. The blonde stopped, but Sir Night Eye carried on. Nezu, be rational. He has his quirk. Nezu cut him off. Sir Night Eye, going on. You are forbidden to give internships here. Please, return Mirio's documents here so we can help him find a new hero to intern with. Nezu smiled. This would be my reaction if a hero came into my school claiming that one of my students is destined to become a villain in the future. He had a brief flashback to his time at the labs. They are lucky I didn't rip their throats out. Nezu, you can't be serious, the green-haired man argued. You have to see reason. Nezu replied, oh, but I am serious. I am not going to allow you both to ruin a student's future, let alone his life, just because you clowns believe in a father's sins passed down to his child. He turned to All Might. And by the way, All Might, the rule where teachers can expel students randomly is abolished. Everything you do now has to pass through me. He pressed a button making the door open. Now, I have things to prepare for, so please leave me alone. The two heroes left the room, making Nezu sigh. It seems All Might is acting irrationally even after he saw the heroic spirit of Izuku Midoriya. He should have suspected this given how the man is close-minded when it comes to anything related to AFO or Nana Shimura. Nana looked at her successor. No hard feelings, Toshi, but this teenage crush you have for me needs to end. For God's sake, in one world, you made the child the enemy of Japan because he is AFO's son, and in this one, you're trying to ruin his life. All Might pressed his fingers together and mumbled, I don't have a crush on you. I see you as a mother. Nana crossed her arms like she was telling him what's the difference, making the hero surrender his head in defeat. Tamura looked at All Might. Dude, that's my grandma. Stop being gross. Izuku meanwhile was shaking the image of Nana and All Might as a couple from his head. After finishing the quirk assessment test, Izuku walked to the principal's office wondering why he was called there on the first day. This was a record. He didn't do anything, but the boy kept a calm expression ready for whatever was going to happen. The boy entered the office to see the principal and his homeroom teacher. Young Midoriya, please take a seat. The rat bear thing saw how nervous the boy was. And please relax, you don't have to be worried about anything. I just need to ask you a few questions. The boy nodded and sat in a seat in front of Nezu. Okay, so what do you want to ask me about? Nezu smiled at the boy. I want to ask you a smile question. What do you know about your biological father? Wow, he cut to the case quickly. Izuku said, I thought he might start skeptically before asking me that question. Nezu replied, I'm not a big fan of dancing around the bush. I prefer being direct when it's serious. Shoto looked at Midoriya and crossed his arms. I'm still sad that you didn't get together with my sister. This made Izuku sigh in exasperation. Shoto, I'm too young for her. The boy opened his mouth, but Izuku cut him off. Don't suggest using Yuri. She's Hawks' girlfriend. And finally, don't even mention your mom. Discord laughed. Alright, let's move to the question section. The 26th universe. Izuku looked at Discord and rubbed his forehead. Please tell me, these types of things don't happen regularly. Discord shrugged. That doesn't make me feel very confident at all. Ibar aside, it's truly sad to see an amazing hero such as All Might fall so low due to his own biases. Though this makes me want to ask how he treated Izuku during classes. I guess he wasn't a wise mentor. Furthermore, how was his classmates' reaction to his discrimination? Did they follow All Might's lead in hating Izuku because of his quirk, or did they make their own opinion? Yes, you mentioned something previously about how All Might is oblivious to the fact he accidentally kills people during his mission. Is he the same here? The religious girl took a thinking pose. Oh, yes. I wonder how Izuku convinced Todoroki's sister to become a hero. What was her father's reaction to his daughter's sudden interest in heroics? I bet that took him by surprise. Also, how did AFO manage to keep an eye on this son of his when he was at UA? I bet it was difficult with Principal Nezu's security system that, from what I heard, was installed there personally by Nezu himself. Ibara giggled a bit before asking, and in this world, how does Izuku manage to carry himself knowing that his idol hates his existence very much? And also, are there other worlds where All Might believes in the sins of the father are carried by the son? Discord hummed. Alright, now these are some very good questions, Shizaki. Let's begin with the last question. Yes, there are worlds like that. There are many worlds like that. Too many to count, in fact, but don't worry. Another one will pop out eventually. Discord said, much to All Might's dismay. Now as for Izuku's reaction, Izuku was sad because his mentor saw him only as a potential villain. But he worked as hard as he could to prove to All Might that he was wrong about Izuku and that Izuku's blood doesn't make him his father. It was quite the uphill battle, with people like Sir Night-Eye whispering into All Might's ear that Izuku is a villain no matter what he did to prove otherwise. Sir felt a glare leveled at him but chose not to look at its source, or rather sources. As for AFO watching Izuku, you would think UA would have better security systems, but AFO hacked them. Granted, he did say he needed to focus his quirk on a minute-by-minute basis to stay inside the system, but yeah. Epic fail on Nezu's end. Nezu's eyebrows twitched as AFO laughed. As for Fayumi's interest in heroics, Endeavor was shocked but trained her to master her quirk because in this world, everything he did was surprisingly for a good cause. He received many shocked reactions. Yeah, I know. Yes, he is just like that. In this world, he was into his hype so much that he believed his rescue missions had no flaws. As for Izuku's classmates, they all turned on All Might, and when the media asked them about the blonde, they told the media he was a quirkist. Ouch. As for the first question, Ms. Ibara, he tried to stop Izuku from using his quirks. But Aizawa was assigned as his assistant, so he was prevented from doing shit. Natsuo's jaw fell to the ground. My dad's horrible actions against our family were for a good cause. He looked at his father, who seemed to be flabbergasted as well. I find that hard to believe. The entire Todoroki family nodded, including Endeavor. How can they be for a good cause? Discord cracked his neck. Allow me to explain. Well, like I said previously, All Might's clean record was merely a ruse in this world, right? Everyone nodded. However, the HSPC always covers up his tracks. This didn't sit well with NG over here, who went and began snooping around to find the truth about All Might and find the horrible truth. He was threatened with death, so he stopped. But that didn't stop him from making the second generation of heroes strong. That's why he was harsh on Shoto and Talia. He saw how All Might harmed society, making heroes dependent on him. So Endeavor wanted his children to be strong enough to help stabilize the situation once All Might is gone, either through death or retirement. Fayumi had a smug look on her face as she looked at her brothers. See, I always told you Dad lashed out because he had so much on his shoulders, but you never listened. A misty hand put itself on her mouth and shut her up. She looked at the source, and it was Purgatory, whose only comment was, "Your father is an ass." This is an exception among many. The girl deflated as the hand disappeared while Shoto awkwardly patted her on the back. Reiju looked at Purgatory. I think you're overselling it a bit. In my world, he's not as bad as he looks. He also taught Shoto flame breathing. Turns out he's a descendant of Rengoku. Shoto was a great asset in my fight against the new Demon King. He looked at the bi-colored boy. He created his own breathing style alongside flame breathing, which was ice breathing, ironically. Purgatory looked at him. I failed to see how someone as nice as Rengoku managed to create someone as horrible as Endeavor, but then again, everything is relative, I suppose. Aizawa then entered the conversation. Aside from one of Izuku's version's horrible experience with humanity itself, did All Might try to sink his internship offers during the sports festival? Discord hummed. Yes, he did that. Poor Izuku received only 5 internships. Only Hawks and Endeavor from the top 10 sent him an internship. Hawks was for less than holy reasons. He coughed into his fist. HSPC wanted Izuku to be its new Lady Nagin. He then hit his chest. Man, that was some cough. As for the Flaming Man, he was told about Izuku from Fayumi and he didn't mind it at all. Lady Nagin on the other side grumbled, "Filthy pigs, always looking for ways to destroy people's dreams. I wish I had enough time to blow all their brains out." Gyro heard her and gulped in fear. "This woman scares me, but I can't blame her." Kamui Woods interjected. "I didn't send him an invite, even though he helped me save the exploding kid. This seems awfully out of character for me." Purgatory answered. "You weren't a member of the top 10 back then, so you don't count, Toothpick. It was only after All Might's retirement you ascended to that position." AFO asked. "Now regarding the USJ and the training camp, how did they play out? Did I, for example, tell Tamura about his brother for him to try and take him back during the USJ? And who was kidnapped from the training camp, even though I have a gut feeling about who was kidnapped?" The man had an unsettling smile. Discord answered. "Well, during the USJ, Tamura did have prior knowledge of having a younger brother, but he didn't try to capture him since he saw it as a video game concept. 2 brothers on different sides fighting for control. Go Team Shiggy, I suppose." Now during the camp, Izuku was the one who was kidnapped. Yeah, it wasn't a pretty affair. The only reason he was kidnapped was because Tamura using Fayumi as bait to lure Izuku in. The trade-off, if you want it in simpler terms. Shoto bit his lip, hating the idea of his sister being in a villain's hand. Endeavor asked, "How did the rescue mission go, knowing that All Might was against Midoriya being at UA from the beginning?" Discord seemed to become a bit uncomfortable. Well, All Might didn't want to join the rescue, and he almost convinced many heroes not to, because, in his words, Izuku was just returning to his father after he finished the mission assigned to him. Nezu glared at All Might, who shrunk on himself. It took Nezu biting him to shut up and do his work. All Might looked at Izuku and began bowing back and forth, telling how sorry he was. The boy all the while still unable to handle how much hate All Might has against AFO in his heart. Oase asked, "So, what was Midoriya's reaction when he met his father, dearest?" "I bet it wasn't happiness." Discord laughed a little. "Fuck no." Izuku was flabbergasted when he met him. AFO was going into monologue like some kind of cartoon villain how Izuku will now follow in his footsteps given he was the best of his brother and the perfect creation. Discord chuckled to himself. I guess he never met the Phantom. Izuku tilted his head in confusion, wondering who Discord was talking about. Is Phantom another version of myself? The boy shook his head, knowing this might come eventually. Reiju said, "Honestly, I'm shocked that All Might didn't use the rescue to kill him." Purgatory replied, "Believe me, it wasn't from lack of trying." Izuku gulped. "He really doesn't like me, does he?" he said with the girls clinging tightly to him. Discord snapped his fingers. "No, he does not. Probably wants to see you on a beach dying while you're..." Discord was whacked by a vine from Ibara, making him pout. Ibara demanded, "Please, don't plant that kind of imagery inside my head." She caressed Izuku's cheek. "I can't imagine him dead, so don't plant that type of image inside our heads." The other girls nodded and yelled at the same time, "Yeah, don't do that." Discord crossed his arms. "That's mean, but sure." He then whispered, "Until I feel like it again." He shook his head and looked at Izuku. "All right, Mini-Me, what do you think of this world?" "This world is interesting. It shows the more unfavorable sides of All Might." Izuku looked at his mentor, who had a cloud over his head. "But it is interesting to see someone having AFO and using it for good. If I had it, I..." The boy remembered how villainous quirks are treated. "I take that back. I don't want it. Being quirkless is bad enough. Having AFO must be a nightmare." AFO laughed. "This quirk was made for a demon king like me." This earned him a slap from Purgatory, making AFO glare at the older Izuku, who replied by flipping him off. Izuku then added, "But other than that, I think we should begin to work to see what will happen later on. I mean, what will happen when all four brothers fight each other? I mean, I want to be a hero. Shiggy wants to be the destroyer of the world. Overhaul wants to be some kind of miracle doctor who lives on Uri's misery. And Nine wants to live as the king of the world because he believes that might is right." Discord nodded. "Yes, that's true. The fight between you four was awesome." He then glared at Purgatory until someone decided that enough was enough and kicked her asses. Purgatory flipped him off. They were putting Uri-chan's life in danger in their fight. He grabbed Gaia, making the girl blush. He pulled her near him and glared at Minda, who was staring at the girl. "Plus, they should be happy that I didn't send them 6 feet under." Izuku asked, "You killed different versions of us." Purgatory looked at him and rubbed his head. "Didn't my fight with AFO Deku make that clear?" Izuku rubbed his forehead. "I mean, you just kill the vilest versions of us, not just random versions." The green-haired adult replied, "No, I don't kill random versions, but anyone who threatens Uri's life is as good as dead in my books." He then looked at Reiju. "What about you?" The other version of Izuku nodded in agreement. Izuku wanted to retort, but the more he thought about it, the more he agreed, "Yeah, you're right. No one threatens Uri's life, even if it's us." The girls cooed at his protective side. Discord then yelled, "Let the wheel of eternal embarrassment take a rip." Discord kicked with his foot, making the wheel till it landed on a world that made a certain Machai-loving student drool in anticipation and hunger. Izuku, the Machai hero. A lot of students had question marks over their heads, wondering how Machai would even make someone become a hero. Discord then nudged Purgatory. "Explain the basics. When we go to a world where there is more interaction with the members of the crew, I'll summon the most sensible one here." Purgatory's reply was a shiver through his body. "Is there anyone sensible on that crew in the beginning? They all look like different versions of you." Gaia patted him on the back. "And that's..." Discord tuned him out with a musical note and said, "Just explain to them the devil fruit aspects." Purgatory rolled his eyes and nodded. He put 2 fingers in his mouth and whistled a high-pitched tune that caught everyone's attention, but Gyro looked like she was about to pass out. "Okay, fucknuts and some bearable people." He was cut off by someone asking him who he was aiming at by calling some of them bearable, only for said student to receive a lightning bolt. "Well, I want to explain to you some concept of the next world. This world has another world collided with it like Tanjiro's world, but this one has aspects of the other world in it. The other has something called devil fruits, which grant users abilities like quirks at the cost of their ability to swim. There are 3 types: Paramecia, Zoan, and Loja. Paramecia usually affects the user's body or the surrounding area. Zoan is basically like having a mutation. Loja gives you elemental powers. That's it. Further explanation will be further down the line by someone from that world." Gaia gave him an unimpressed look. "Wow, when it comes to explaining how we sucked at training, you took your sweet time at berating us and telling us how we have the combined IQ of a beaver. But when it came to explaining fundamental concepts of another world, you made short and quick." The girl crossed her arms and pouted. "You're mean, Izuku." Purgatory laughed at her before rubbing her hair, making the girl punch him playfully. Reiju looked at his demonized girlfriend and asked her, do you think they're in love with each other? The demon girl looked at them and then at him before tilting her head in confusion, with Reiju following as he looked at his counterpart. Izuku walked toward the gates of UA with a somewhat confident expression on his face. He needed to do this. He trained like these years to be able to come here. He needed to live up to the same level as the previous user of the mochi fruit. When he found it with a detailed description of its techniques written by a certain Bruli, he knew it was calling out to him, so he ate without a second thought. Of course, he later learned that devil fruit users lose their ability to swim. Good thing a hero was there to save him. All three versions of Izuku looked at him. Seriously, you just ate it. Izuku blushed a little while his girlfriends took turns whacking him for being stupid. Meanwhile, Ochako was looking at Purgatory with a dopey grin, with drool leaking from her mouth because she remembered him saying something about his ability to replicate the abilities of other versions of himself. The girl wondered, if I asked nicely would he give me some mochi? Izuku took a step forward but noticed a girl tripping on a loose brick with a shocked expression on her, so he extended his arm and grabbed her. Sorry for using my quirk on you, but you know it's bad luck for someone to fall before the exam starts. Izuku waited for a reply, but he saw that the girl was looking at him with stars in her eyes and drool leaking from her mouth. He snapped his fingers in front of her, making the girl shake her head. Once she stopped acting like she was in love, Izuku got a better look at her and he had to admit she was really hot. Her face was currently red, but he could see the blush marks which made her look adorable. Her cheeks seemed to be full, but that made him want to pinch them. Her eyes were a soft brown which he found soothing. All in all, she looked like the girl of his dreams. Ochako began to malfunction while Mina whispered, it's your chance. Eri is wide awake now. Once she sees you're an official couple, you'll be swimming in Midoriya's hugs. The girl nodded. Izuku on the other hand hummed, this is embarrassing. The boy's face was red and he knew what was about to happen sooner or later. Eri was awake and looking at the scene with a critical eye. She looked at him and then at Ochako and began to hum. Oase looked at Rin and Kaibara and began patting them on the back. Sorry, dudes, but you lose. The boys' faces fell. But to be honest, did you guys ever have a chance? It was known that Uraraka had a huge crush on him for a while now. Rin retorted, but that doesn't mean a guy can't hope, does it? The dragon scale user looked at Izuku and murmured a few curses in Chinese. The girl began scrambling away from him before falling to the ground. The girl jumped and began bowing and apologizing to him at a rate that would put him to shame. Izuku chuckled, it's okay. There's no need to apologize to me. But anyway, my name is Izuku Midoriya. The girl composed herself, but her face was still red, replied, a pleasure, Midoriya-san. My name is Ochako Uraraka. The girl clutched the skirt she was wearing. And I'm sorry for the way I acted, but mochi is my favorite food. Hehe. Izuku nodded. If he ever saw someone made from katsudon, he'd probably act the same way. The boy's stomach began to grumble thinking about such a person. Izuku looked at his watch. Want to go inside so we can talk more before the exam starts? Ochako followed him with a small smile on her face. She was currently staring at him with an expectant gaze until he chuckled a bit. You really like mochi, don't you? Uraraka blushed and nodded, but Izuku then did something that shocked her. The boy ripped his hand, which turned into mochi, and gave it to the girl who had stars in her eyes. The girl began bowing to him and thanking him profusely. The girl then asked him, are you planning to take the entrance for general studies or the hero course? The boy replied, yeah, I'm planning to take the hero course exam. He then noticed her odd look, making him tilt his head in confusion. Is there any problem? I found you. Confused. The girl began to look away as she munched on some mochi. I don't know. Is it possible to be a hero with such a quirk? The girl, hearing what she said out loud, began backtracking. I didn't mean it in such rude way. What I mean is that your quirk doesn't sound like something you'd find in the hero course. You'd mostly find it in the general course. Everyone looked at Ochako, with Izuku saying, I don't blame you, Ochako. Anyone would have felt this way. I mean, this power is something you would find inside a kitchen. Momo interjected. I'm sure she meant well, but there are a lot of unconventional quirks inside the hero course. I mean, look at Kota's quirk. He doesn't have any way to protect himself. Aizawa hummed in agreement. That's right. He looked at his students. Each quirk, if trained sufficiently, can be heroic. Though some of them are a bit unconventional, it doesn't mean they are weak. Look at me. I can only take out quirks, but from there, I have to fight my opponents using my combat skills. Ochako pressed her fingers together. Ochako said, I'm sure I was just shocked that he was planning to take the hero course with such a quirk. The girl looked at the ground. Plus, I can imagine all the potential uses of this quirk. The girl's mouth began to water in hunger, making Momo make a tissue and wipe her mouth. Setsuna came and closed her mouth. Girl, this is sad. You're making yourself look desperate. Oase replied, I don't know. He looked at Yui. If Yui heard of a tomato man, she'd probably be the same. The boy ducked to make sure that the flying bolt didn't hit him, but the bolt hit poor Juzo. Izuku looked at Yui, who had a small blush on her face. I like tomatoes too, if it helps. The girl's blush deepened from Izuku's comment. The two reached the meeting room, and from there each person was taken to a different room for their writing exam. Izuku found the exam quite easy. Izuku finished the exam in 1 hour and spent the rest of the exam revising it. Izuku then went to the conference room, where he sat down and was greeted by a familiar face. Bakugo looked at him with his usual glare. Izuku had to admit that when he was younger this glare would scare him. Now, it showed him that the owner of this was kinda weak, because other than his quirk, Bakugo didn't have anything else going on for him. Bakugo looked at Izuku and cracked his neck. He had an aura that emitted death. Nothing else going on for him? Huh. Bakugo stood up only to be wrapped in 2 shadow hands. He looked in Purgatory, smiling at him with Purgatory's shadow around him. Purgatory then began to spin Bakugo around until the blonde fell with a small soul exiting his mouth from dizziness. Izuku sighed in relief and thanked Purgatory a little bit. Ibara said, "Wow, his shadow can elongate and stretch." She looked at Takoyami. "Can you do the same thing with Dark Shadow, Takoyami?" The bird boy hummed, "I think I can do that, but not to this extent. Also, it has to be in darkness for Dark Shadow to elongate this way." The girl nodded. She then looked at Izuku, who was scribbling in his notebook like a madman. Melissa was beside him, both making theories about how Purgatory can use his shadow in different ways. This scene was a bit funny, seeing 2 nerds in their zone. Itsuka then joined the two and began discussing with them potential uses. Turns out, the girl was a secret quirk nerd, because she knew she had to analyze her opponent's quirk to subdue him quickly. This was quite the comedic scene. Izuku then listened to present Mike explaining the practical exam. The boy was thinking of a strategy when he was called out by a blue-haired boy for muttering. Izuku apologized. Present Mike then sent everyone to their testing site, with Izuku going to testing site D. Izuku was at the testing site. He was meditating and trying to focus his observation haki to sense the people around him. He closed his eyes, which helped him get a mental image of the people around him until he sensed a familiar presence. Izuku sensed Ochako, so he went to greet her, only to be stopped and reprimanded by the same blue-haired boy, asking him if he was trying to sabotage the girl. Tensei looked at Tenya. "Tenya, what did I tell you about jumping to conclusions?" The boy blushed a little. "A lot. You told me that a lot." Izuku patted Tenya's back. "Don't feel bad, Tenya. I'm sure that you always mean well." The boy looked back at him and smiled. "Besides, you were only doing what any good person would do in a situation like this. You were just looking out for her." The boy looked at him and gently moved his hand away. "Look, I met her at the entrance exam. I sensed she was nervous, so I wanted to help her calm down." Tenya looked away and thought about it for a moment. "I see then." The boy then bowed. "I'm sorry for jumping to conclusions." The boy then went away to talk to someone who seemed to be using a belt as a support item. Izuku then walked up to Ochako, only for the gates to be open. Izuku quickly entered through the gates into the fighting arena. The boy then summoned a huge spear from his body that he managed to hide using his Machai body. Of course, he already had it processed as a support item a couple of days before the exam. Minda whispered, "Wow, talk about overcompensating for something." He was kicked in the head by Purgatory and Reiju, making the boy whimper. "This hurt. What did I do this time?" Reiju whispered under his breath, "I hate perverts. They always give me wrong vibes." Izuku then used the spear to skewer a 1-pointer before using the skewered robot and smashing it into a 2-pointer. The result was the 2 robots becoming bits and pieces scattered around. Izuku then jumped to the side using his observation haki to avoid a strike from a 1-pointer. Izuku then turned his hand into Machai and made it enlarge until it exploded. The explosion then sent chunks of Machai that destroyed the robot. It was like a grenade exploding. Izuku then regenerated his hand. He saw a 3-pointer, so he pointed his finger at the robot. The boy began to fire Machai bullets and destroyed the robot. Izuku looked at Discord and Purgatory. "What's haki exactly? What does it do? Can it be taught?" Discord answered him. "This is something you'll go to understand later on." He looked at Purgatory. "I would tell him to explain, but he really doesn't know how to describe it and can't explain it properly, like how you can't find anything creative to describe OFA. Izuku pouted. "Hey, I'm not that bad at explaining things. I'm really good." Gran Torino snorted. "Says the kid who described OFA as an egg inside the microwave." This made Izuku deflate in sadness, while Purgatory and Reiju patted him on the back to cheer him up. Reiju said, "If it helps, I can't explain total concentration breathing. I gave my brother a hard time until he understood what I was aiming at." The other male counterpart didn't say anything. Izuku then looked and saw a couple of robots down the road, so he coated his arms in some dark substance and began firing fists of Machai at the robots, destroying them into pieces. Izuku whistled. "That's some serious firepower." Purgatory nodded. "Tell me about it." Izuku stared at him. "I fought the original owner of this devil fruit. Real great guy. He has a strong sense of honor. Fighting him was the greatest thing ever." Izuku pouted. "Your adventures sound awesome." A cloud formed over his head. "Too bad, you're an emo who doesn't want to share." Izuku could hear the tics forming while others laughed. Kendo came between them and said, "All right, aside from Izuku pulling a monoma, I think his fighting skills and ingenuity are amazing. He turned something like Machai and turned it into a destructive weapon." Others agreed with her. Nezu sipped his tea. "Ah, yes. I love when we come along unpredictable students." Izuku continued this way and stacked up points until he stopped to catch his breath for a moment. "All right, I think I got enough. 23 pointers, 10 2-pointers, and 8 1-pointers. I think this is more than enough to enter the hero course. I guess I can lay back." The boy's sentence stopped when he felt the ground was shaking. It took a moment for the boy to steady himself. "What in the world is happening?" Izuku said, but a shadow fell over him. The boy looked up at the huge behemoth in front of him. "I can't believe this is even legal." Izuku was now looking at a huge green robot that towered over everything else. The robot smashed its fist against one of the buildings, destroying it into many pieces, causing rubble to fall on the street. This caused mass panic among the contestants, who began to run like headless chickens. "Some heroes they're going to be," Izuku said before he noticed something with his observation hack. There was a faint presence near the robot. "Wait, there is someone trapped." Izuku looked at Nezu. "This can't be legal, can it?" Nezu's smile didn't work as a confidence booster, because it could mean one of two things: the robot is legal or it isn't, and Nezu just doesn't care enough. Izuku ran toward the trapped contestant and saw it was Uraraka, so he yelled, "Hang tight, Uraraka. I'm going to save you." The boy then began to inflate his hand until it was the size of an elephant. The boy threw a punch toward the robot. The huge machine didn't stand idle and threw a punch back. From there, it was a contest of strength regarding who will last longer. This counted on for a while until Izuku's fist took a black coating, which caused the robot's hand to cave in. Izuku's fist continued to go through until it destroyed the robot entirely. The boy went to Ochako and lifted the rock off her. "I'm glad that I saved you. Are you all right, Uraraka?" Uraraka looked at him with awe in her eyes. "Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for saving me." Izuku hummed, "I see. The Machai can be inflated to large degrees, which allows him to harden it." The boy's mind froze for a moment. "Wait, how can he make the Machai harden? That's impossible." Izuku looked at Discord. "How can he make the Machai harden like this?" Izuku crossed his arms with a determined expression. "I won't stop my protest until you explain it to me." Discord told him, "Please, if I knew I would have explained it." He looked at the other two. "And even though our resident edgelord knows how to use them to a full extent, he doesn't know how to explain them like I told you before." Hound Dog sighed. "Pity, it might have helped the students become stronger." Discord deadpanned. "Bruh, I am literally going to erase your memories after you leave this place. I only brought you here to entertain myself, nothing else. Why would you need to remember it?" Nezu gave him a thumbs up. "This is the epic representation of chaos. Good work." Discord bowed to Nezu. "Thank you, Nezu-sensei. I will always live up to your expectations." Aizawa looked at them and shivered. "I reiterate that I feel pity for that version of myself who had to deal with him regularly." Other teachers were having the same reaction. They could only imagine the horror of Nezu teaming up with a reality-bending Izuku. A month later, Izuku was standing in front of his new class. It was Class 1A. The boy was more than ready to become a great hero. The boy looked inside the classroom and was greeted with an odd sight. Bakugo was arguing with the boy from his testing area over Bakugo's posture. The explosion user was putting his feet on his desk, while the boy seemed to chastise him for this. Izuku had a small frown on his face. "Well, that's an odd beginning for this new year." The boy shook his head. "This is going to be a very interesting year. I hope this doesn't become something regular." Izuku then felt something coming up to him, so he looked behind him and saw a yellow caterpillar. He looked closer and felt a human presence. He then concluded it was just a sleeping bag. But who was the person inside it? Suddenly, the bag turned around and faced him. Izuku looked at the owner of the bag, who was staring back at him. It went on for a few moments until Izuku broke the silence. Hey, are you by any chance a teacher here or just?" The man cut him off. "Be quiet. Good job on noticing me. Don't tell the others. Go to your seat." The man answered Izuku's question, so Izuku went to his seat, ignoring Bakugo's glare. Moments later, Ochako entered the room. She looked around for a bit and saw him. The girl yelled, "You're the Machai boy. Thanks for saving me." The girl then looked to the ground. "And thanks for the Machai you gave me that day." Vlad King looked at his coworker. "Seriously, you still pull this stunt? I thought you changed after you expelled Wano last year and got an earful from Nezu because of what happened until you explained what you were doing." Aizawa merely smiled at him, unnerving the blood hero. Nezu replied, "Ah, yes." Aizawa's way of testing his students' spatial awareness. It is always entertaining to watch their shocked reactions when they see him crawl in. Ibara's sweat dropped. "I can't believe this is how you started the first day of school." She looked at Aizawa, who smiled at her, making her shiver, though it does match up with his reputation. Mizo replied, "Don't worry about that. His reputation is overrated. He's more of an overworked dad who's trying to keep his wayward children from doing reckless things. He's a big softy. The huge teen's frame shivered when he felt a glare directed at him. He didn't need to turn to know who was glaring at him. The boy pretended he didn't feel anything. This was for the best. Aizawa then entered the room in his sleeping bag and waited for the students to calm down. It wasn't until Izuku pointed out his presence that they calmed down. The man stood as he exited from his sleeping bag. It took you 10 seconds for you to calm down. This is bad. Heroes, in those 10 seconds, could have saved entire cities. He then took out something from his sleeping bag and threw it to Izuku. Go and change your clothes. Meet me at the training grounds. I have something special for you. The boy stood up and went to the changing rooms. The boy quickly made his way toward the training ground where he found Aizawa waiting for them. The man looked at him and hummed, 2 minutes. Good time. I hope the others come here faster. Daylight is being wasted. Izuku hummed in agreement. If he learned anything during his training is that every second should be used for something important. After a small while, the others came and stood beside Izuku waiting for Aizawa to tell them what to do. The nighttime hero looked at Izuku. Midoriya, you came first in the entrance exam. The man threw him a ball. Come here and stand in this circle. Once the boy stood in the circle, the man said, throw it as strong as you can. The boy nodded. Aizawa then added, you can do anything as long as you stand inside the circle. Izuku hummed. The boy then looked at the ball. He then used his hand to compress the ball inside the mochi before he released it. The ball was launched from his hand and flew in the sky until it disappeared from everyone's sight. Aizawa looked at his device and hummed in approval, 1298 meters. All the students were amazed except Bakugo, who seemed to be having a mini-stroke. Seriously, Ochako crossed her arms. Even when he has a quirk, somehow Bakugo looks like he is about to have a stroke. She looked at Bakugo. What's wrong with your programming? Bakugo had a vein pop on his forehead. Want to repeat that again? Round cheeks. Ochako replied, okay, what's wrong with your programming, you angry small-purse dog? Mitsuki fell over from laughter and began to hit the ground. This made the boy angrier. Discord then said, the usual Bakugo roast. It makes my soul much happier. It's funnier than the time I made him into a female to force him to admit that I'm stronger than All Might. He stayed a girl the rest of his life and married Kirishima just because he didn't want to admit that. Kirishima and Bakugo looked at each other before jumping away in fear. Stay away from me. Discord laughed. Okay, that's enough. We've seen enough from this world. Achako's face fell. All right, let's see what your opinion is on this world. The 27th universe. Discord looked at the students and asked, so what do you think of this world? He decided to ignore a depressed Ochako who had a miniature cloud over her head raining on her. Sad. Eri jumped excitedly. Papa was so awesome. He fired his fingers at the robots. He then smashed them into tiny pieces and ripped them limb from limb. His hand then enlarged and punched the huge robot in the face to save Choco. He was awesome. Izuku patted her on the head. Aizawa asked him. Other than the fact that he was amazing, like Eri said, Izuku's eyes became stars because his teacher called him amazing. Don't push it, Midoriya, or I'll ask Purgatory to put you through his most hellish training regime. Izuku quickly backed down, seeing his counter smile. What was the thing Midoriya used to predict the robot's movements? Can it be taught? Because believe me, my students need all the help they can get. Furthermore, how was he able to master his devil fruit quickly? The man stopped for a moment before saying, also, does this version of Problem Child throw himself into danger like he's invincible? Did I ever find out that he didn't have a quirk per se? He suddenly grinned evilly, looking at All Might. What was All Might's reaction when he saw Midoriya's multiple powers? I bet he had a heart attack. All Might yelled from the side. What did I ever do for you to hate me this much? Discord ignored All Might. Let's start with the last question. All Might was worried in the beginning. He began to see many AFOs popping everywhere. But eventually, he calmed himself down after a long lecture from Nezu. And we all know how those go down. The UA staff shivered a little, remembering their own lectures when they fucked up Nezu's vision. For your reaction, you were astonished, so you confronted Midoriya about it. Izuku tried to weasel his way out of it. But you weren't convinced, so he told the most fucked up lie he can think of. He told you he was a lab experiment by Nezu to replace him if anything happened to the rat thing, since his quirk makes him immortal. This made you pass out, but when you got up, he told you the truth. You were shocked but accepted because it was much better than the Nezu clone. The mochi fruit gave him the ability to shift the mochi in different positions, so he was too confident in his abilities. You had a hard time keeping him from throwing himself to death's door at every turn of the corner. Aizawa sighed and shook his head. As for the first two questions, yes, it can be taught. I can't because I never learned it. The ability is, like you heard, is called Haki. It is divided into 3 types: armament, observation, and conqueror's Haki. Armament gives you armor over your body through your will, I think. Perception gives you the ability to sense danger, where it is coming from, and how dangerous is it. Advanced observation Haki allows the user to see moments into the future. Everyone was shocked, but Discord dropped the ultimate bomb. And the conqueror is not something that can be taught, but you are born with it. It is 1 in a million. With it, you can knock out people with your will. As for the mastering part, he had the book of the last owner as mentioned. Izuku suddenly yelled, "Wait a moment." Purgatory groaned. "Yeah, back then I unleashed Conqueror's haki when I knocked your friends." Reiju added, "His haki is very strong though. He managed to knock out Upper Moon 4 to 6 with a single stare when we had a little adventure together." Reiju heard a soft "what the heck" from Tanjiro, but Reiju earned for his comment a kick to the shin from his companion for some reason. Shoto asked, "But can someone from our world be born with it? Like how Purgatory is?" Discord replied, "Stain, AFO, and All Might. Do you remember how you all froze against them when you felt extreme pressure coming from them? Yeah, it can happen, but the residents of those worlds knew how to use it to the extreme. Just like how Tanjiro's universe knew how to use breathing to the max. Like how a friend of mine knew how to use negative emotions to the max. And so on, the multiverse and beyond it are very interesting." He looked at Purgatory. "Maybe you can tell us some stories at the end of this." The green-haired male wanted to say no, but his Gaia stopped him and gave him a puppy-eyed look, making him sigh and nod. Manga inquired, "Can you tell us more about the world where the devil fruits come from?" The boy stopped for a moment before a question mark appeared over his head. "Come to think of it, how did this devil fruit end up in our world to begin with?" Discord hummed, "Well, the world where they come from as well. What's the good word to explain it?" Discord began to talk, but Reiju and Purgatory beat him to it. "Dark, pure evil, medieval horror show. Is that what you were looking for?" Discord clicked his tongue. "No, I wanted to say wacky, but let's go with what you're saying." He looked at the students who had a slightly disturbed look. "Let's just say that government in that world would do anything to remain in power, and when I say anything I mean anything." Discord shook his head. "Aside from that, let's go to the other question." He looked at Manga. "Well, when the original owner died, the spirit of the fruit entered another piece of fruit which was near his sister. That woman could use mirrors as her own private traveling dimensions, and that worked on mirrors of other worlds. So when seeing this world was of heroes, she put the fruit there from the lucky person to have with a diary full of the original owner's moves." Manga whistled, "And lucky indeed. This had to be the most broken luck I had ever seen." Izuku blushed. "Please don't say that. This is so embarrassing." His girlfriends laughed at his shy attitude. They found it endearing. It was part of the reason why they loved him. Discord laughed. "Well, we have to thank Bakugo for Izuku finding the fruit, since he was chasing Izuku through the forest that day, which caused Izuku to fall into a ditch where he entered a hole. That's where he found the fruit." Bakugo shivered, feeling several angry stares at him. The boy decided to ignore the stares because he knew if he looked behind him, he would be going to get smoked by angry females. Izuku chuckled. "Ooh, I guess something came out of Kaken's constant bullying of me this time around. He was whacked by his other two versions, making him say, 'I get it. No need for that.'" Discord leaned on Reiju's head. "Well, this all belongs to the eye of the beholder, as they say." Tamura asked, "Did any more of those devil fruits enter our world?" "Man, what I wouldn't to get my hands on one of those." Tamura leaned back, imagining all the destruction he might cause, only to be whacked by Nana, who shook her head. "Okay, fine." "Geez, Grandma." Discord replied, "Yes, there are 3 devil fruits that made their way to your world along with the Machai fruit. The first one was the Bloom fruit, which allows the user to sprout extra body parts, which Melissa ate on an island when she was 3 because she was hungry, ruining her father's research on the odd fruit." The blonde-haired girl blushed a little. "Then there was the diamond fruit, which turns the user's body into a diamond, which Kirishima ate by accident during the training camp. And finally, the fire fruit that Dabai ate made him fire himself. Yeah, Izuku was the one sent to fight him, since he was the only one who knew how to hurt." Discord rubbed his face. "In the end, Dabai died by having his face impaled by Izuku's trident, which was covered by haki, which allowed it to bypass devil fruit protection, which in Dabai's case allows most attacks to pass through him without causing him any harm." Dabai blinked. "Are you fucking with me?" He stands up angrily. "The one world where I can kill Shoto and rub it in Dad's face, I get to fight the green-haired boy only for him to have the only thing that can kill me. That's complete and utter bullshit. It isn't fair." Spinner looked at him. "Dude, we're villains." Dabai glared at him, but he continued, "We're the last people who are supposed to be talking about something being fair or not." Dabai sat as Ray sat beside him and petted him on the head. There, sweetie. I'm sure there's one world where you get to act out your crazy dreams." Dabai scoffed, but threw a small thanks to her, making the woman say, "I'm already making progress in my relationship with you." Melissa asked, "Do I join the hero course in this world because I have a quirk, so to speak?" Discord nodded. "Yeah, you did join the hero course, but in Japan, since you wanted to learn from the best of the best. Plus, it didn't hurt that you studied Japanese, so you knew how to get around, unlike another blonde who didn't bother to learn the language and decided on what hero school to join in a dart-throwing game." Pony fired a horn, but he ducked under it, with Pony yelling, "It was a mistake." Monoma gave the horse girl a dry look. "Seriously, you joined UA because of a dart-throwing game?" Izuku looked at Pony. Well, look at the bright side. She got to have a new and interesting experience. Define interesting, Monoma said, because the last thing I knew, being knocked out in the forest from gas isn't something interesting. Purgatory said, anyway, yeah, Melissa in that world joined UA and she became a walking nightmare for both Eraserhead and Powerloader. Eraser for her intellect where she made new crazy moves every day and he couldn't cancel her quirk. And Powerloader couldn't prevent her from working with Mei where they blew up the lab so many times. It made him go crazy. Purgatory hummed. Izuku also taught her haki, so yeah, but that didn't help them when Izuku thought I was Toga in defeating me. They lasted 10 minutes. Quite impressive if I say so myself. He looked at Deku. Most Izukus who uses OFA lasts an average of 5 minutes. Izuku slumped. That's depressing on a whole new level. Discord shrugged. Believe me, that's a compliment from him. He met all kinds of things. Demons, monsters, overlords, gods, wizards, warlocks, dwarfs, elves, mermaids. Minda suddenly grabbed Purgatory by his collar and shouted, Purgatory, you bastard. Why scum like you get to meet a beautiful mermaid and have foo? Minda felt something wrap around his body as Purgatory's snake looked him in the face and hissed. The man held Minda, sorry, but I'm not some random street hooker to fool around with mermaids. The boy was then kicked like he was a rocket. Plus, I only loved one woman. Gaia clapped, you handled this so well. The girl tilted her head. I honestly thought you were about to kill him. Something dawned on her. Wait, are you still? Purgatory put his hand on her mouth. Be quiet, woman. Are you trying to kill me? The girl laughed while Reiju and Izuku understood where she was aiming at and laughed together. Discord laughed a bit, but he heard Momo ask, I want to know if Izuku also taught us haki. Discord shook his head. No, he only taught Kirishima and Melissa since if he taught everyone and the villains managed to learn those abilities. Well, you can already see the damage they can do. Momo nodded. Yes, I can see what will happen if someone like AFO manages to get his hands on haki. The damage will be unbelievable. Izuku agreed. Yeah, AFO can already choke people with his presence, but the damage he can do with the power to knock out people with a stare. The boy shivered, truly terrifying. I don't want to think about it. It's so horrible. It's like a horror movie. Discord nodded. Yeah, but your opinion, mini-me before we go to a new world where I can torture with more embarrassing content. Izuku blinked owlishly before saying, I hate you. I really do. The boy returned to the question. I found it amazing. The idea of a fruit giving me power is amazing, but something tells me there's more to it. I wonder what haki is, though you explained what types they are, but you didn't explain what it is. Discord hummed. Nice commentary, twerp. Now let's go back to the wheel. He kicked the wheel and it continued to roll until it landed on something. Forbidden love. Izuku's face burned, and the only type of forbidden love he thought about was when he looked at Toga, who seemed ecstatic by the possibility of such a world where she and Izuku fall in love with each other like one of those love tales she read about back when she lived with her parents before going off on the deep end. Get ready, Deku-kun. I'm coming to you. The girl sang happily. Izuku gulped as Discord said, calm your engine thrusters before they give you a heart attack. The scene then began and it showed outside of the UA, making Izuku say, this doesn't seem good. The scene zoomed inside the dorm, showing students doing regular stuff. Mostly all of the students were doing regular stuff. Minda was trying to sneak under the table to take a pic of the girls from somewhere they couldn't see them, but failed miserably because he caught Bakugo's attention. The midget boy took a note. Never mess with Bakugo's girlfriend, Kami. Shinso frowned. What the fuck? The illusion girl made it into the hero course, and I didn't. Bakugo cut him off. Fuck off, mindfuck. She had a black belt in karate and taekwondo. The boy looked embarrassed. Do you have that on your waist? The boy didn't reply. I thought so. Mina popped up beside Bakugo. How do you know that, Bakugo? Is she your? The boy cut her off. My girlfriend. Yeah, what are you going to do about it, raccoon eyes? Mina pouted and looked away. You're not funny, Bakugo. Mido babe is much more funnier to tease, especially when his face turns red like a tomato. The scene continued to zoom into the girls' side of the dorms and then entered Achako's room. The girl looked like she was ready to go on a date. She was applying lipstick and a little bit of mascara. The girl checked herself and sighed. I shouldn't be doing this, but I can't help myself. The girl held a small black star necklace and grasped it. He understands how I feel. I'm going to save him from his darkness. The girl smiled. I will do it. Achako was the 9th user of OFA, though from what the 2nd and 3rd told her, she was a false user for fornicating with the enemy even though she did nothing of this sort. She was still a girl, thank you very much. She did not lose her virginity yet, but they weren't the only ones. 7th distrusted her. 6th and 5th were unsure about her. 4th, well, he mostly kept the I'm not angry but disappointed in new treatment. Only the 1st cheered her efforts to reform the boy she cared about. Achako at this point passed out while the 2nd and 3rd facepalmed. She fell in love with the enemy. AFO's son of all people. 2nd growled in anger. He couldn't understand how the fuck does someone fall in love with their worst enemy. Yoichi smacked him on the head. Watch your tongue, Kyudo. That's my nephew you're talking about. The second glared at him, but Yoichi carried on. Furthermore, a son doesn't carry the sins of his father, or did you forget what happened 2 worlds ago? The named Kyudo frowned. Yeah, I guess I forgot that. Sorry. The man looked away before yelling, but the girl herself admitted, he's a villain in this world. Yoichi shrugged. The girl still remembers the first time they met. It was at the USJ. She fell from Kurogiri's portal and was injured and dazed. She was surrounded by villains and they were having less than innocent thoughts about her. She was too weak to fend them off because she had blood running down her forehead. She was afraid, but something happened. What are you doing? Ochako heard a commanding voice speak from behind the villains. I sent you here to do a job for me, not cause problems or harm the students. Our deal was crystal clear. You can give them the beating of a lifetime, but death or violation is off the table. One of the villains, come on, boss. We only want to have fun. I'm sure. The villain didn't get to finish his sentence because the leader of this raid blew his head into pieces, showering everyone including Ochako with bits and pieces of the villain's head. Ochako commented, that's going to scar me for life. She looked at Izuku. Thanks for the nightmares, Deku-kun. The girl was unconsciously trying to wipe blood from her head. I'm sorry, Uraraka. I'll make it up to you. Izuku said as the girl smiled a little. You want to make it up to me? Just wait until we are together as a couple. I'm going to kiss all of my emotions out of you. The girl thought to herself while her friend's sweat dropped at her thirsty expression. Aizawa looked at Izuku. Midoriya, next time you want to be a villain, try to be like this version of himself. A villain with morals. The man stopped before saying, though I never expected AFO to allow that. I guess being a father made him easy. Ochako looked and saw the villains each go his way to find other students to beat up. She was left with the leader. It seems that you're in trouble. Perhaps I can help you, Ninth. Ochako's eyes widened. How do you know about that? The girl blurted out before covering her mouth and saying, I mean, what are you talking about? My quirk underwent a mutation. The villain nodded. Sure, whatever the huge blonde balloon told you, I'll bite. The boy gave her his hand. The girl seemed hesitant, but he told her, there's no need to worry. If I wanted to harm you, I would have done so already. Plus, I saved you, didn't I? Ochako took his hand. I suppose that you're right, but can you take off the mask? The girl pointed to the skull mask he was wearing. It's a bit unnerving. The boy pointed at it. Really? I like it. It was my dad's. He was killed by All Might, though my uncle is living a happy life now without him. I bet he's happy dad's dead. Ochako asked, and who's your dad? Now that I think about it, who are you? Gran Torino looked at All Might. That girl is in for a huge shock. The old man flew and kicked All Might in the head. Why the heck didn't you tell any of your successors about AFO from the beginning? Why did you tell them when shit hit the fan? All Might defended himself. I thought I finished him off. Had I known he had the adaptability of a cockroach, I would have told any successor mine about him. Reiju said, that doesn't change the fact that you didn't tell them. The green-haired teenager added, plus, this isn't something you spring on them at a moment's notice. All Might rubbed his swollen cheek. All right, I guess I messed this one up. A lot of people gave him a look that asked him if he was kidding or talking seriously. Discord hummed. Yeah, add to that, the overclock effect that you had an idea about, and you're the worst mentor of all mentors in the history of mentors. Poor Gyro. She suffered the repercussions of accepting OFA for her relatively short life. Even with my healing powers, she died from childbirth in my world from the damage OFA did to her. The boy smiled. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Izuku Midoriya, or Shigaraki as I go these days. I'm the rightful successor of AFO, your mentor's worst enemy, the person who gave him a hole through his stomach. The teen removed the mask. Though be warned, unlike my father, I found all quirks fascinating, even so-called useless ones. So our fights are going to be much more dangerous. Ochako's face paled as she looked ironically into a beautiful shade of emerald green. I hope you are ready for this because I won't give you another second chance. He disappeared. Ochako paled. Deku-kun is AFO's son. She seemed silent for a moment. All right, I'm going to join the villain's side this time because there's no way anyone can beat Deku with AFO. All Might interjected, you can't give up, young Uraraka. All Might puffed up, there's always hope in this world. Even if your opponent is exceptionally smart and can quite possibly kill you with a fork in your sleep, evil can always be defeated if you try hard enough. Izuku agreed. Yeah, evil can always be defeated if you find the right way. Purgatory added, a strong opponent can be defeated. I beat people 100,000 times stronger than me. The human mind can outpower everything. I defeated eldritch abominations which were there before the beginning of fate and time itself. Takoyami scoffed. Even though you are strong, I doubt you can beat an eldritch abomination. The boy was knocked out by a single glare from Purgatory. Shigaraki asked, shouldn't you have defeated the Scarlet King by now? Purgatory replied, there's a difference, genius. The ones I defeated didn't go around defeating other abominations and taking their powers only for someone to outsmart said abomination taking its place and becoming a menace. He put his hand on his face. Plus, destroying his empire is much more important to make sure no follower of his can rebuild claiming to be his successor. Gaia nodded and said, if we take the head of the tree, but leave the roots, they'll sprout again. He's strong with his supporters. The dear girl's face soured. Plus, Izuku-kun already had a showdown with him. It didn't end well. Ochako went outside her room avoiding Mina somehow. She was going to meet him, but this wasn't a date. She wasn't in love with him. She was only doing this to save him from himself. Inside OFA, the users shook their heads while Yoichi held a sign that was cheering Ochako on to use the power of love to bring him to the light. Back with Ochako, she kept telling herself that she was 100% wasn't in love with him. She certainly didn't like his domineering personality. She didn't like his intelligence and charisma. She didn't like how he made her feel special. She didn't like. The girl blushed a little. All right, I guess I do like him a little, so I'm going to save. Yeah. The girls looked at Ochako as Mina said, wow, I guess for Ochako to admit her feelings, the boy she loves has to be a. The pink-skinned girl was tackled by Ochako, who was telling her to be silent. Somewhere else, Izuku was getting ready to get out to find Ochako at the mall they usually met. Well, normally a villain like him can't be seen outside. But Izuku has a quirk that allows him to make people forget who he is when he is seen. It works like when someone remembers something that is on the tip of the tongue but can't fully get it out. Take that, Dad. I told you that there's no such thing as a useless quirk. The boy heard the vestige of his father reply angrily, to which Izuku said, I love you too, Dad. Like I told you, I'm going to bring OFA back into the family, but by different means, so stop whining about the power of love. Izuku shook his head as his father's vestige complained about how the power, love, and friendship always managed to defeat the Demon King. Izuku replied, well, I'm going to use it against them. Izuku heard the reply and said, no wonder Mom told you to stay away from me. Izuku's sweat dropped. I'm afraid to ask. But is AFO argumentative like this version of myself is making him appear to be? Yoichi nodded, making Izuku sigh. Well, he seems like a good father. AFO scoffed. Like I said, I was a good brother. My brother was only killed when idiot number 2 and 3 took him out of the safe that I put him in for safety. Izuku deadpanned. Seriously? You put him in a vault. What did you expect him to do? Thank you. AFO shot back at him. He was a skinny small twerp who lived in a world of flowers and roses. There was chaos and destruction everywhere and he wanted to play hero. What was I supposed to do? Give him a tap on the back? AFO sighed. Yes, I want to prove to my brother the Demon King can win because the world isn't all flowers and roses and I am petty. He disliked the Demon King. Izuku's sweat dropped, but Purgatory said, no, wait. I think he had a point here. This made Izuku facepalm and Annie honest. Izuku finished putting perfume from his father's collection from 200 years ago. He also wore the suit his father told him he first met his mother in. Ochako liked it the first time they met, so she would like it on their 20th date. Aizawa spat out a drink from his mouth. Are you kidding? 20 dates. He looked at All Might. What the heck are you doing? Your successor is fornicating with the enemy. Ochako yelled back. No, I am not. Aizawa rolled his eyes. Of course, she would deny that. She is in love with the enemy. All Might had a serious expression on his face. Young Uraraka, you can't date the enemy. The girl nodded, while All Might gave Eraserhead a thumbs up, making the nighttime hero sigh. I can't believe this. Izuku said, I'm a villain again, but AFO's son and successor for all my trouble. The girls patted him on the back. Get any worse? Yuri asked Itsuka. Does that mean Ochako is going to be a new Mama Itsuka? Izuku knew that yes, it could get worse at any possible moment. Unlike the girl herself, Izuku was honest with his feelings for her. He liked her. He wanted to make her his future wife and empress of the world when he finished taking control of everything. He didn't want to be the all-powerful Demon King like his father. He wanted something simple. He wanted to be the emperor of the world. He wanted to be law and order himself. Ochako whistled. Deku-kun, I don't think being the emperor of the world is something simple. Since he was a young boy, he wanted to be a hero against his father's wishes, who wanted him to join the family business. Eventually, his father gave up on him, saying he'd just come around by himself once he saw how the real world works. The first blow was when his quirk came in. It was a stronger version of his father, which allowed him to attract a quirk of someone from a distance. Everyone treated him like a villain in the making, but he decided to use the pain as something to push him forward. The second blow was when his mother was killed by Endeavor chasing a thief, though she wasn't the only victim. He was out at the park at the time, so he didn't die. The entire building complex was burnt down and everyone died. The Safety Commission buried everything under the rug and threatened everyone who dared to speak against them, including Izuku, who was 6 at the time. Izuku smiled nonetheless, but the seed of hatred grew in his chest. Ouch, that's bad. Izuku said, well, I can expect this. My mom is the most important person in my life. I can't imagine what I would do if she died, though I'm sure I wouldn't go full-on villain. At best, I would become a vigilante. Reiju leaned toward Purgatory. Should we tell him about that, Deku? The other counterpart of Izuku replied, "Have you lost your mind? I'm waiting for the moment his world appears so I can get a couple of laughs out of it." Gaia asked, "Who are you talking about, Izuku-kun?" Purgatory patted her on the head and told her she'll find out eventually, making her pout in protest. Discord added to himself, "Wait till he sees Yggdrasil. That guy is a total riot and savage." Izuku heard and sweat dropped, wondering to himself, why are all my versions monsters? He looked at Reiju, who smiled at him, and at Purgatory, who gave him the middle finger while drinking some kind of potion. Note to self, beg him to teach me magic and potion making. Purgatory yelled, "Not happening. Dream on." The third blow came not soon after. He was 9 when killed his father in front of his eyes. The doctor wasn't able to save him because he was busy with something else that day and was far away. Izuku spent weeks after he was forced to leave with the dysfunctional family that is Bakugo's family, convincing himself this was going to happen sooner or later. But deep inside his heart, that small seed planted after his mother's death grew a little. AFO laughed hard while All Might groaned into his hand. He couldn't believe he created another AFO Deku, but this one seemed more reasonable than the other one. He seems more sane. AFO chastised him. "All Might, how can you do it? Killing a father in front of your son. Have you no soul?" The villain shook his head. "For shame, All Might. For shame." All Might retorted, "I don't want to hear that from trash like you." Kyudo stopped him from throwing himself at the AFO. "I will destroy you, you potato head." The final blow came after he learned the old saying, "Don't meet your heroes," is true. Not only did All Might reject him, but he told him that with a quirk like his, the best thing he can do is dying, because the quirk itself is corrupting and he'll become a threat to humanity sooner or later. The hate in Izuku's heart at the moment exploded. He left All Might and called the doctor, who warped him away to begin his plan to rid this world of injustice. Izuku looked at himself in the mirror and said to himself, "Truly, the hardest decisions need the strongest of wills to make them." He then walked to his date no matter what Ochako said. He doesn't remember when he fell in love with her. Perhaps it was their first meeting at the USJ where he saved her and was intrigued by her trustful nature. What kind of person takes a 200-year-old quirk without asking what its backstory is? Perhaps he fell in love with her when he saw her during the sports festival. Never mind that. He needed to show her how flawed the hero world was. No, he needed to show her how flawed the world is. He was sure he could take her into his side. No one is going to stop him. The doctor is scared shitless of him, especially after he tried to convince Tamura to betray him. But his older brother was loyal. The man is on thin ice. Dabai doesn't care, in his words, where he satisfies himself. Toga, ... she might be a problem, but her cute pout will end in 2 weeks top. Toga smiled. He thinks my pout is cute. She threw herself at him. "I also love you, Deku-kun." The only thing she met was Ibara's foot, which made the blonde-haired girl faceplant into the vine-haired girl's foot and kiss it before vines wrapped around her before releasing her like a bayball. Toga went back to where she was sitting, but she was completely dazed. "Deku-kun," the girl muttered, making Izuku feel a little bad for her. Ibara asked, "Are we going to ignore the fact All Might told Izuku to die?" All Might sighed and leaned at the ground, drawing circles. "Man, this hatred of FO is going out of hand." This escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast. Nezu took a sip of tea. "I'm trying to ignore it myself, but this is getting out of hand, isn't it?" Hound Dog replied. "He has an obsession with him. I can't believe All Might survived his obsession with him. Add to that, his obsession with his mentor. He should have killed himself long ago." The blonde hero had a cloud over his head, muttering, "I don't have any obsessions with anyone." Izuku was walking around. He passed by a hero and wished him a good day. The hero greeted him back, but he looked like he was trying to remember where he saw him. The best thing about his quirk, even if they saw his picture, they still wouldn't apprehend him. Izuku smiled when he saw Ochako in the dress she wore for Island. He walked up to her and covered her eyes. "Guess who?" The girl stiffened before relaxing as Izuku added, "It's your loving boyfriend." He chuckled when he heard the girl squeak, "You're not my boyfriend." The girl said this 100 times. She was in denial, but Izuku could wait for her to accept the truth. "I'm only here to help you see reason and turn a new leaf." Oh, yes. Izuku thought it was admirable, if not a little idiotic. She thought she could give him a change of heart, but that could wait for another time. "So, you're saying you're going out of your way for your arch-nemesis just because?" "Yes, because I'm a good person," Ochako said, pointing a finger at herself. "You didn't think I love you, did you?" the girl said, crossing her arms. Izuku came closer and held her hands. "Of course you love me. It is written all over your face." Ochako scoffed as a blush covered her face. "That is one of the most ridiculous things you ever said." The girl was taken by surprise when Izuku wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her close. "What are you doing?" "Proving my point," Izuku said before locking lips with Uraraka, who kissed back before Izuku let go. "I have to say that is one way of not loving me. Come on now, the restaurant is waiting for us, babe. After all, I have many things to discuss with you about where our wedding will be after I conquer the world." Ochako, although still a blushing mess, puffed her cheeks. "I told you that you're becoming a hero. Don't you want to prove that FO can be used for good? But I am using it for good, Izuku retorted with a smiley grin. Taking over the world isn't a good thing. Ochako screamed a little loud, making people look at them, but she said, sorry, my boyfriend likes to play World Conqueror a lot and he has a hacking quirk. People then continued to carry on with their lives as Izuku said, so I am your boyfriend. Ochako pouted, don't push it. Yuri smiled and went to Uraraka, Miss Ochako, are you gonna be my mama? Ochako nodded happily before she went to Izuku and tackled him to the ground. Deku-kun, I've been waiting so long for this. Izuku asked, what were you waiting? The boy couldn't continue his phrase because Ochako locked lips with him, taking him in a very deep kiss much to the other girl's jealousy. Satsuna commented, man, and I thought Yui was thirsty. Yui appeared behind her and said, is that a challenge? Satsuna jumped in fright. In the vestige world of AFO wiped his eyes with a tissue. My son is already planning to take over the world and is bringing OFA back into the family. Sure, it wasn't the way I envisioned it, but it's better than nothing if you ask me. In the vestige world of OFA, Kyudo yelled, at least play hard to get. Don't go gooey on him. Yoichi replied, calm down, little ninth will use the power of love to make him join the good side. He was hit by a plastic cup thrown by Nana. There's no need to be violent. Kyudo mumbled, I can't believe ninth is a lovesick puppy. Discord clapped his hands. All right, I had enough fun with this world, let's see the opinion. He looked at Ochako, who was still kissing Izuku. Is anyone going to deal with this?